Chapter 3060. The aura of the Heaventide was still flashing with time mirages, and the profoundness it contained became more and more profound. Asterisk crack. Asterisk the 6 blood coffins beside young Master Tion coffin cracked at the same time and couldn't bear it anymore. He sighed helplessly, put away the blood coffins, and sat cross-legged on the altar to recover. Then, some upper Tao Void Realm experts, and even some peak upper Tao Void Realm experts, were injured and had to give up. However, their gains were extremely shocking. Even if they only caught a glimpse of the time mirage and comprehended bits and pieces from it, the benefits to their future cultivation of the great Tao would be extremely shocking. Therefore, although these Tao Void Realm experts felt that it was a pity, they were all very excited. This trip was not in vain, really not in vain. It's worth thousands of years of seclusion, haha. The great elder of Eastern Xian Divine Domain, Luo Shao Sword Sect, laughed. After witnessing the scene of the experts fighting in the time mirage, comprehending a trace of the essence of the Tao of Sword Tao from the Sword Qi, and having a chance to break through the bottleneck, he was naturally very excited. What a pity! If I could comprehend it for another incense stick's time, my harvest would be even more shocking. The great elder of 3 supreme profound sects, Changsuan's eyes were hale and hearty, but at the same time, they were filled with regret. High Venerable Spring Autumn was also forced to stop his comprehension, and he was also excited and regretful like great elder Chang's son. I don't know who comprehended the long-browed foreign race expert's hand seal. I will exchange it with him at all costs. These monsters, they will definitely become saints in the future. The great elder of Luo Shao Sword Sect looked at the other altars and exclaimed. At this time, there were less than 10 people left on the altars, including Hu Lingyi, Feng Zhou, Duan Jiren, and other powerful Tao Void Realm experts. Then, he saw Su Feng's figure and couldn't help but be shocked, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. High Venerable Spring Autumn and Great Elder Chang's son looked at Su Feng and instantly fell in a great shock like the Great Elder of Luo Shao Sword Sect. They couldn't believe that Su Feng could persist until now. Do you think that it could be a Tao saint from Xixin who wore Su Feng's mask to participate in the Heaventide treasure hunt? Once a Tao saint enters the range of the Heaventide will be in chaos. Who else could the masked Xixin cultivator be other than Su Feng? High Holiness Spring Autumn and Great Elder Chang's son shook their heads in denial. The Great Elder of the Luo Shao Sword School laughed. I didn't expect Su Feng to grow to such an astonishing height. You two tried to snatch his weaver spider back then. As far as I know, that brat is very vengeful. Let's see what you two will do next. He's Supreme Dongshuan's disciple after all. I don't think he'll do anything to me. At most, I'll just lower my head to him and compensate him with some benefits. Great Elder Chang's son smiled helplessly. He was not a member of the Eastern Profound Heaven Pavilion. Moreover, the 3 supreme profound sects and Su Feng did not have an ordinary grudge. He could not take out any powerful treasures to resolve it. Gu Tianqi. Thinking of Gu Tianqi, Great Elder Changsuan's eyes brightened. Gu Tianqi's relationship with Su Feng was not ordinary. He might be able to make use of this relationship. Great Elder Chang's son breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Su Feng. He felt like he was in a dream. The little cultivator who could be easily slaughtered by him back then had grown to the point where he, a Dongshin powerhouse, was fearful and even in awe. Thinking back, it was hard to believe. Su Feng was actually at the end of his rope. He could hold on until now because he cultivated the Jiushuan's Wuji scripture, mastered the enigma of Tianyin, and Slayer's heart. The time mirage that appeared now was too shocking. It had exceeded the limit of what he could endure. He was trembling all over. His pupils had turned crimson, blood seeping out of the corners of his eyes and the corners of his mouth. If I can hold on a little longer, my future cultivation path will be smoother and even higher. Su Feng was holding on bitterly. BZZT, 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 BZZT. His Tao heart was trembling madly. The rainbow-colored light flickered continuously. Until now, he had been holding on with his strong will. It was also thanks to the seven-colored Vajra's Taoist heart that had merged with the glacial bone chalcedony that it had become incomparably sturdy, comparable to a powerful divine saint expert, even though it was still far from the height of the immortal Taoist heart. Otherwise, it would be difficult for his will to withstand the terrifying impact of the time mirage. Thump, thump, thump. Slayer's heart was beating nonstop, releasing the sound of heavens that helped Su Fong to relieve a lot of pressure. The Jiuxuan's Wuji scripture flashed in the Taoist palace as well, as if confirming the ultimate meaning of the time mirage, allowing Su Fong to remember it. Although it was difficult to comprehend it, it was imprinted in his mind. Boom, boom, boom. The chaotic aura that erupted from the heavenly tide suddenly became extremely shocking, surpassing that of a divine saint and reaching the height of a Daozu. There were only 3 images that were projected in the light pillar. One of the images showed the battle between 2 Daozu, while the other 2 were pill refinement and treasure refinement. Although the images did not have the earth-shattering battle scenes of ordinary cultivators, every gaze of the 2 Daozu powerhouses as they fought, and every hand seal during pill refinement and treasure refinement contained unimaginable Taoist rhythms and boundless profoundness. Those cultivators below the divine void realm only took one look, and they immediately felt their minds tremble, their Taoist hearts tremble, and they spat out blood. There were also some divine void realm cultivators whose cultivation level was too low. Their eyes immediately exploded, and blood spurted out. Those powerful divine void realm cultivators on the altar also staggered, and the light circles around them shattered. They cried out in pain, and their comprehension was interrupted. The mirage at the height of a Daozu was not something that even half-step divine saints were qualified to look at, let alone comprehend. Whoosh, a figure broke through the air. This was a white-robed youth who was not even 30 years old. He had an imposing appearance, and his white robe was as white as snow. He also exuded a divine aura. He was a half-step Daozu at the same height as Xianzheng. This person was the sovereign of the Western Mystery Mountain. Unexpectedly, he was also alarmed by the appearance of the mirage, and his original body directly appeared here. However, the sovereign's appearance did not attract the attention of others. All the divine void realm cultivators on the tide viewing pavilion were doing their best to comprehend the 3 mirage images, while the other cultivators were attracted by a figure on the altar belonging to the Western Mystery divine realm. There was only one person left on the 9 altars. The light circles around him were still there, and it was extremely eye-catching. It was impossible not to attract the attention of others. Su Fong. On the 9 altars, only Su Fong was still comprehending the 3 mirage images at the height of a Daozu. Although his body was trembling, and the light circles around him were flashing wildly, and it seemed that he would not be able to hold on for much longer. His eyes were also bleeding, but he was still looking at the 3 mirage images. This is impossible. How can a divine void realm cultivator withstand the pressure of the mirage images? Could it be that Su Fong's cultivation realm has already reached the height of a divine void realm? Hu Lingyi and the other peak divine void realm cultivators all looked at Su Fong in shock. The countless cultivators below the altars were also shocked and surprised. Even the cultivators searching for treasures in the chaos tide were all dumbfounded. Su Fong was also at the end of his rope. The Tao and profound meaning contained in the 3 mirage images at the height of a Daozu had already surpassed his limits. Splat! After the light circles around Su Fong flickered rapidly, they started to shatter layer by layer. Blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth, and his aura also started to weaken rapidly. Suddenly, there was a buzzing sound in his mind, as if it came from the void vibrating from the heavenly Tao, pushing aside the layers of fog. Countless divine patterns and symbols flashed in Su Fong's Tao palace with a strange rhythm, dancing along with the sound of the heavenly Tao. The 6th level. After comprehending the countless mirage images, especially the profound meaning of the great Tao in the last 3 mirage images, Su Fang's cultivation of the Jiuxuan everlasting scripture broke through the shackles of the 5th level and stepped into the 6th level. The 6th level of the Jiuxuan everlasting scripture meant that Su Fang's current cultivation realm had already surpassed the limit of the divine void realm, and he was one step away from the height of a divine void realm cultivator. What he lacked now was the accumulation of energy in the Tao Palace and a deeper understanding of the scripture of the 6th level. The light circles around Su Fang stopped shattering and suddenly expanded several times, becoming close to 10,000 feet in size, almost covering the entire altars. The 3 powerful divine void realm cultivators from the western profound divine domain on the altars were directly shaken off the altars, and they were all indescribably shocked. Su Fang was completely unaware, and he stared at the 3 mirage images without blinking. He used the heavens derivation unraveling and memorized them in his mind. This lasted for about half an hour. The light pillar of the heavenly chaos tide suddenly trembled, and the Xian Guang dimmed. Just when everyone thought that the second heavenly chaos tide was about to stop erupting, a blood-red light shot up into the sky from where the heavenly chaos tide had erupted. Within the blood-red light, there was a ball of blood the size of a walnut. However, it was just a little bit of blood, but it exuded a terrifying aura that was comparable to that of a Daozu, and there were faint, mysterious marks flashing within the blood. This drop of blood came from a foreign race cultivator at the height of a Daozu, and it was not an ordinary Daozu. It's a pity that it's just a drop of blood from a foreign race Daozu, and it seems to contain the aura of the heavenly tribulation, and most of its essence has been lost. Even so, this drop of blood is still very useful to a divine void realm cultivator. It's probably a foreign race Daozu cultivator. When he was about to take that legendary step, he was killed by the heavenly tribulation, and only this drop of blood was left. If we can see the mirage of this foreign race cultivator when he was about to take that step, then that would be truly shocking. Even a supreme Daozu cultivator would go crazy for it. Even if there is a mirage, do you think we have the right to comprehend it? The divine void realm cultivators at the top of the tide viewing pavilion stopped their comprehension and exclaimed. At the same time, these divine void realm cultivators also secretly gave orders to the cultivators of their respective factions to obtain that drop of blood at all costs. Thus, apart from those cultivators who were injured while comprehending the heavenly chaos tide, nearly 100,000 cultivators madly charged toward where the heavenly chaos tide had erupted. Suddenly, from where the heavenly chaos tide had erupted, a string of indistinct voices could be heard. It seemed to be some sort of incantation, but it also sounded like someone was talking nonsense. It was not that they could not hear it clearly, but with the cultivations of many cultivators, including those half-step Daozu cultivators like Xian Zheng and the Western Black Mountain Sovereign, they did not have the right to hear it. Chapter 3061. That's the last words of the Daozu expert after he failed to break through. It's not some last words. It's the enlightenment he gained when he tried to break through to the peak of the Daozu. Creation. This is the true creation of the second wave of the heavenly tide. That incantation-like voice was just some meaningless noise in the ears of the other cultivators. When these words landed in the ears of the many Dao saints, they were all shocked. They all gasped in shock and gasped in shock. However, even with the strength of these Dao saints, they were unable to discern anything useful from that voice. Even peerless existences like Xian Zheng, the Western Black Mountain Sovereign, and the Punishment Elder, who were close to the level of the Daozu, could only obtain some ambiguous information from that voice. A few Dao saints tried to memorize the voice with their primordial spirits, but their Dao palaces and primordial spirits were shaken and almost collapsed. They spat out blood on the spot. The profound meaning contained in that voice pointed to the true meaning of the great Dao. If one's cultivation level was not high enough, it would be difficult to memorize it. Su Fang looked toward the source of the voice, his eyes shining brightly. Buzz, buzz, buzz. That mysterious voice contained boundless true meaning of the great Dao, causing the Jiuxuan Limitless Sutra to vibrate in the Dao Palace. Many unfamiliar scriptures that contained boundless profoundness flickered along with the voice. Compared to the Joshuan limitless sutra that he had obtained, it was a scripture bestowed by the heavens. The last words of the expert of the foreign race were the true meaning of the great Tao, causing the scriptures that Su Fong had never cultivated before to resonate. Moreover, the level of these scriptures far exceeded his current cultivation level. The highest level that Su Fong had grasped was the 6th level, and he had yet to completely master it. And the scriptures that flashed were from the 8th level. Su Fong did not even have the right to comprehend and cultivate a scripture that was 2 levels higher than his, let alone master it. As the scripture flickered, it also caused the surrounding heavenly Tao laws to vibrate. The halo around Su Fong suddenly lit up, like a blazing sun rising in the darkness. In an instant, it was dazzling and dazzling. Such a shocking scene attracted the attention of numerous people, including those Tao saints. They were all shocked and looked at Su Fong in disbelief. These scriptures contain a supreme truth that surpasses Daozu. Although I'm unable to comprehend them now, Master can. Perhaps there will be a day when I will be able to use them as well. I must obtain such a good fortune. How could Su Fong miss out on such an amazing opportunity? Suppressing the excitement in his heart, he tried to memorize the scriptures. Who knew? Su Fong was shocked to find that his consciousness could only watch as the scriptures flickered, but he could not remember them. As soon as those scriptures entered his memory, they quickly disappeared. It was as if there was a mysterious power that was erasing his memories. That is the power of the heavenly Tao. Because my cultivation is not high enough, I am unable to remember these scriptures. These scriptures belong to me. Why am I not even qualified to remember them? Su Fong's eyes flashed with determination. His heavenly mandate Dharma body appeared in the Tao Palace. He clasped his hands together and chanted the scriptures from the Heavenly Secret Life shrinking technique. He was actually going to use the Heavenly Secret Life shrinking technique to forcibly imprint the scriptures of the Joshuan Wuji Sutra into his destiny. He was going to use his lifespan as the price to activate the Heavenly Secret Life shrinking technique and obtain that supreme good fortune. Chi, chi, chi. When the scriptures came into contact with the power of the void, they immediately burned. Su Fong's lifespan was also burning rapidly. His life force was withering at an alarming rate. The entire process only lasted for 3 breaths of time. Su Fong lost nearly 1/5 of his lifespan. His black hair turned white, and his face became that of a man in his 30s. Fortunately, the scriptures of the Joshuan Wuji Sutra belonged to him. It was just that he had yet to comprehend them. Right now, he was memorizing the scriptures that belonged to him, and not directly memorizing the last words of the foreign race elite. Therefore, the power of the void was not very strong. Otherwise, a mere void Tao cultivator like him would have been killed instantly. A mere profound Tao cultivator, you overestimate yourself. I thought that Su Fong could really defy the heavens and even hear that world-shaking voice. This is the price of arrogance. Su Fong is in danger. Some people were worried for Su Fong, and those cultivators who were originally filled with jealousy of Su Fong were all gloating when they saw that Su Fong had suffered a backlash and lost a large amount of his lifespan. Seeing that the foreign race elite's voice was about to end, although many Tao saints felt that it was a pity, they could only watch helplessly. Whoosh! A figure stepped out of the void. It was Shi Xian Daozu. This time, it was Shi Xian Daozu's formless avatar that appeared. This avatar was formless and formless, mysterious and formless, but it could transform into anything. Now that it appeared here, no one could sense its existence. Back then, it was this avatar that had been injured in the battle with the 10 Directions Divine Masters. It had been staying in Shixian Mountain to recuperate. At the same time, it was also guarding. Unless Shixian Mountain was attacked by a powerful enemy, this avatar would not easily appear. It suddenly appeared now because of the last words of the foreign race elite that erupted from the heavenly tide. It actually ended. Looking at the place where the heavenly tide erupted, Shi Xian Daozu revealed a regretful expression. He was still one step too late. He could only hear some lingering sounds. Moreover, with his strength, he was unable to reverse the flow of time and listen to that world-shaking voice again. That voice was the true meaning of the great Tao, that the foreign race Daozu spoke with the voice of the great Tao after he failed to reach the legendary peak. He prepared to leave it for his descendants. This time, it erupted with the heavenly tide. A pity, truly a pity. If I could hear the last words of the foreign race Daozu, this ancestor might have been able to gain something from it. Even if I could not take that step, at least there would be a glimmer of hope. What a pity. I was just an instant away. It seems that this ancestor's providence is not enough. Perhaps I will never be able to take that step. Shixin Daozu's heart was filled with regret. The strongest expert of the human race was Daozu. No one had ever been able to surpass Daozu and reach that legendary height. It was precisely because of this that the human race was constantly being attacked by the foreign race. How difficult would it be to take that step? Moreover, there were no predecessors to learn from. How could Shixin Daozu not feel regret when he finally had a heaven-sent opportunity and missed it like this? But he was a peak expert of the human race. He knew that he could not force an opportunity that did not belong to him. He quickly recovered his composure. Just as he was about to leave, Pew, the halo around Su Fong shattered with a puff sound. His body swayed, and a mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. Then, he fell to the ground. Shixin Daozu raised an eyebrow. He waved his sleeve and sent out a wave of peaceful presence that entered Su Fong's Dao Palace. Master, Su Fong's spirit was lifted, and he sat up from the altar. Shixin Daozu's reproachful voice sounded in Su Fong's mind. You were too rash. The voice of the great Tao from a foreign race expert at Daozu's level is not something a lower-level Void Realm cultivator like you can meddle with. You are lucky that you did not lose your life. Su Fong responded embarrassedly. This disciple was rash. I will not dare next time. There will be a next time? This kind of time mirage will not appear at any time, especially a foreign race expert at Daozu's level. Even I rarely encounter one. You think there will be a next time? Shixin Daozu's tone was harsh, and Su Fong realized the danger just now. That voice just now was useful to master? Of course, but with your present cultivation, it is too early to say this. Never mind, I heard some lingering sound just now. I will go back and study it in seclusion. Maybe I will have some gains. It is better than nothing. Master, is there something else? This disciple has some scriptures from the Jiuxuan's Infinite Sutra. Maybe they will be useful to master. I have no use for the scriptures that you cultivate, said Yi Futian. Those scriptures are from the 8th level of the Jiuxuan's Infinite Sutra. They appeared because of the last words of that foreign race expert. What? Shixin Daozu made a sound of disbelief. His figure appeared in front of Su Fong in a flash. But only Su Fong could see him. Is what you say true? Impossible. You cultivate the Jiuxuan's Infinite Sutra and have a realm that surpasses other cultivators. Even if that voice can make the scriptures appear, how can you remember those scriptures? Shixin Daozu lost his composure. His eyes flashed, but he did not dare to be sure. Master, this disciple used the life-shrinking art to forcibly memorize those unfamiliar scriptures into my destiny. No wonder you lost so much life in an instant. You brat. You are crazy. You don't want to live anymore. Dao ancestor Shixin knew that although Su Fong's words sounded easy, they were actually extremely dangerous. After all, the profundities contained in those scriptures far exceeded his realm. The slightest carelessness would result in his death. Let Master see those scriptures. A consciousness entered Su Fong's Jiuxuan Dao Palace. A long time later, Shixin Daozu sighed in shock. I had not thought. Master would have never thought that I would obtain such an astounding creation from you. Su Fong was both shocked and overjoyed. Master, these scriptures are really useful to you. Not just useful, they are very useful. Shixin Daozu's tone was filled with excitement as he slowly said to Su Fong. So the world-shaking sound that had appeared at the end was the comprehension that the foreign expert had received when he was trying to reach Daozu's limit. While he had failed, it was still precious. Su Fang had memorized it through the Jiuxuan's Infinite Sutra. Shixian Daozu had obtained these scriptures. It was like hearing the voice directly. The use to Shixian was hard to imagine. Even through these scriptures, there was hope of taking that legendary step. While it was just a thread of hope, it was something that human cultivators had never had before. How could Shixian Daozu be happy? Su Fang was naturally overjoyed to be able to help Shixian Daozu's cultivation. He was smiling so widely he could not close his mouth. Chapter 3062. Shixian Daozu sighed emotionally and was gratified. When I took you in as my disciple, I did not think that I would receive such a shocking fortune from you. First, it was the ice heart flower, and now it is the last words of the strong cultivator Daozu. Su Fang said embarrassedly, Master, you once promised that you would give me a reward every time I advanced to a new realm. Humph, I will not forget about you. You have already received the reward I gave you for advancing to the Dao Void realm. Su Fang was shocked and shocked. You have already received it. You have to raise the heaven-devouring insect well. It will be of great use to your strength. There will definitely be extraordinary treasures in the next third tide. Go and fight for it. The eruption of the chaos tide this time is different from the past. Even the world-shaking sound of the strong cultivator Daozu charging to the peak has appeared. This is the fortune of a human race. At the same time, it also means that a great disaster will descend upon the human race. Although your current strength has already entered the ranks of the strong, it is far from enough. The enemies you will face in the end are the strong cultivators of the other races. When I return to Shixian Mountain, I will summon my true body and Dharma body to enter seclusion. I will fight for a glimmer of hope for myself and for the human race. You are on your own. You must not reveal the slightest bit of information about the scripture. Otherwise, it will bring you a great disaster. Remember this, Shixian Daozu said in a serious tone. Then he looked at Su Fang with gratified eyes. When he nodded, his figure turned invisible and disappeared without a trace. Heaven-devouring insect? What the hell was that? Su Fang couldn't help but be shocked. Then he thought of the gray beetle that was born from the cocoon. Su Fang suddenly understood. So Master already knew about the cocoon, but kept it there. It was actually a reward for me to advance to the Dao Void realm. Master really put a lot of thought into me. While Su Fang was shocked, he was also very grateful. He also understood why the sovereign appointed him as the master of the strange Silence Peak. It was not to suppress him, but to give him a fortune. Su Fang also understood that the sovereign did not treat him like this because he had struck Lung Qingyu and wanted revenge, but because Shixian Daozu had incited him to use this to temper Su Fang. Shixian Daozu's good intentions caused waves of warmth to flow through Su Fang's heart. After understanding all of this, Su Fang's resentment towards the western profound mountain's sovereign vanished without a trace. If even Master values it so much, then the gray beetle must be something extraordinary. It's just that thing can eat too much. Thinking of the gray beetle, Su Fang was filled with anticipation. However, Su Fang felt as if a knife was piercing his heart when he thought about how he had almost gone bankrupt after being eaten by the gray beetles. If it could eat so much when it was just born, how much would it cost to raise it to adulthood? The Su Fang already had the heaven-piercing Blood King Rot-Tan as a glutton. Now, there was another powerful life form that could eat 10 times or even 100 times more than the heaven-piercing Blood King Rot-Tan. My traveling spider is still with young Master Celestial Coffin. Young Master Celestial Coffin. Su Fang looked at young Master Celestial Coffin, who was currently fighting for the treasure in the Chaos Tide, and a fierce murderous intent surged in his heart. At this moment, in the Chaos Tide, many cultivators were engaged in a frenzied battle for that drop of Daozu's blood. That drop of Daozu's blood was something that even Dao saints coveted, let alone those Dao profound and void Dao cultivators. However, only those peak upper Dao void cultivators were qualified to fight for that drop of blood. The others did not have the right to interfere at all, let alone Dao profound cultivators. The battle for Daozu's blood was extremely tragic. Every cultivator used their most powerful techniques, using peerless Abijna, Xian Bao, and rune talismans. From time to time, Void Dao cultivators would retreat with heavy injuries, and there were even Upper Dao Void cultivators who died. Even their Dharma bodies and origin souls could not escape. The strength displayed by those experts at the top of the Void Dao realm shocked Su Fang. Hulingi of the Hu people, Yi Wuji of the Yi clan, and the Dao Void Realm Daoists of the other 5 divine clans. The strength and ability displayed by the peak experts of the other divine regions were even qualified to fight against Dao saints. Seeing such a scene, Su Fang also completely dispelled the idea of fighting for Daozu's blood. He had lost a lot of lifespan. Although it was not fatal, it made him feel dispirited. It was obviously not a wise choice to fight for Daozu's blood now. If I can get that drop of blood, not only will I be able to recover my lifespan quickly, but my physical body and heaven-piercing Blood King Vine will also undergo another transformation. Forget it, one should not be too greedy. I have gained enough this time. Although Su Fang felt that it was a pity in his heart, he still dispelled the greed in his heart. Although that drop of Daozu's blood was precious, it was insignificant compared to what he gained from the second wave of the Heavenly Tide. Not only did he gain a higher level of Jiuxuan's Wuji scripture, but he also gained a large amount of time mirages, including the memories of 3 Daozu experts. The most valuable thing was undoubtedly the enlightenment that the foreign race Daozu gave after he failed to reach the peak. This was something that could not be exchanged with any treasure. After gaining so much, he still wanted to covet more treasures. It would be like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Moreover, there was still the 3rd wave of the Heavenly Tide. Perhaps there would be even more powerful treasures. He had to recover quickly. Su Fang entered the interior of Fu Yao's cavern and sat cross-legged in the time formation. He left a thought to pay attention to the movements outside. With a flip of his right hand, a finger bone appeared in his palm. This finger bone was obtained during the 1st wave of the Heavenly Tide. It probably came from a Dao Saint expert of a foreign race. There was still some life essence left in it. Su Fang did not have many treasures that could be used to recover life. He could only make do with this finger bone. Just as Su Fang recovered, the battle for the drop of Daozu's blood also came to an end. Unexpectedly, that drop of blood did not land in the hands of the Hu people's Daozi, Hu Lingyi. Instead, it was obtained by the Yi clan's Dao Void Realm Daozi, Yi Wuji. In the end, Yi Wuji returned to the Tide Viewing Pavilion with the drop of blood. The other Dao Void Realm experts could only give up and return angrily. Congratulations to the Yi clan for obtaining such a valuable treasure. At the top of the Tide Viewing Pavilion, many Dao Saints congratulated the Yi clan's Dao Saints. They were all envious and jealous. The Yi clan's Dao Saints were very proud and praised Yi Wuji. Yi Wuji was able to obtain Daozu's blood from so many experts. He had paid a huge price and was heavily injured. It was obvious that he would not be able to continue fighting for the treasure during the 3rd wave of the Heavenly Tide. However, he was very excited. With this drop of Daozu's blood, his chances of becoming a Dao Saint had increased by 30%. How could he not be happy with such a shocking reward? The 2nd wave of the Heavenly Tide was coming to an end. However, there were still some scattered treasures that erupted from the Heavenly Tide. Many cultivators remained in the region of the Heavenly Tide to search for treasures. In the past, there would be a gap of 3 months to half a year between the 2nd and 3rd wave of the Heavenly Tide. Many Dao Saints and those Dao Void Realm experts who had returned to the spiritual altar gathered together and made use of this time to trade. The items that they traded were the memories that were shown in the time mirage just now. Because there were too many images in the time mirage, it was impossible to remember all of them. Some people were not strong enough and could not remember the images that were useful to them. Thus, they took out treasures and traded with other cultivators. The trades were indeed shocking. Some experts did not hesitate to take out treasures in order to obtain a mirage image that was useful to them. There were even king-grade Xianbao, as well as some extremely rare spiritual items and gems. This was normal. Treasures were dead. However, Some of the images in the time mirage were not only beneficial to their own cultivation, but also to their entire faction. These experts were willing to sacrifice their treasures to take out those images that were useful to them. Unfortunately, everyone's memories of the time mirage were very limited. This meant that even if some people had treasures, they would not be able to get what they wanted. The first elder of the Luo Shao Sword sect belonged to this category. I am willing to take out my Luo Shao Divine Sword in exchange for the sword will mirage images of the saint-level foreign race experts. That mirage image was extremely important to the first elder of the Luo Shao Sword sect and the entire Luo Shao Sword sect. He was going all out and took out his most powerful treasure. There are not many people who cultivate the Sword Dao here. Who would have the time to remember the mirage image about the Sword Dao? I do remember bits and pieces. However, the Luo Shao Divine Sword is your natal Xian Bao. What's the use of it for me? Perhaps there are Dao Saint experts who have remembered the mirage image. Unfortunately, you can't take out treasures that can tempt them. The other Void Dao experts shook their heads, which greatly disappointed the first elder of the Luo Shao Sword sect. Suddenly, a figure condensed from Su Fong's thought flew over and said to the first elder of the Luo Shao Sword sect, "Is this the mirage image you want?" Then, he rolled out a jade slip condensed from his thought and spiritual power and flew to the first elder of the Luo Shao Sword sect. The first elder caught it in his hand. Immediately, a picture appeared in his mind. It was the mirage image that he wanted. It was complete and clear. Su Fong, thank you very much. My Luo Shao Divine Sword is yours. The first elder of the Luo Shao Sword sect was pleasantly surprised. He took out a king-grade Xian sword with an ancient aura. Who knew? Su Fong waved his hand and took the Luo Shao Divine Sword back. I am indebted to the Luo Shao Sword sect, and I am friends with Shu Chong Shao of the Luo Shao Sword sect. For this mirage image, the first elder can give me 1,000 peak supreme great elixirs. I will not accept your natal Xian Bao. How can this be? If it were not for the mirage image, how could the first elder of the Luo Shao Sword sect be willing to give up his natal Xian Bao? He did not expect that Su Fong would only accept 1,000 peak supreme great elixirs. How could the first elder of the Luo Shao Sword sect not be surprised? Although 1,000 peak supreme great elixirs was not a small number, it was nothing compared to the mirage image. It was no different from giving it away for free. The first elder of the Luo Shao Sword sect took back his Xian sword and took out 5,000 peak supreme great elixirs. This was all he had. Chapter 3063. The other Dao Void Realm experts looked at the Luo Shao Sword sect's great elder with envy and jealousy. At the same time, they also admired Su Fong, especially supreme martial artist Spring Autumn and great elder Zhangsun of the three highest profound sects. There were so many mirage images that appeared in the second Heaven Tide, and many of them were extremely important to them, Heaven Pavilion and the three highest profound sects. Although they tried their best to memorize them, it was a pity that some of the mirage images were difficult to memorize with their strength. However, not only did they not have any friendship with Su Fong, there was also an unresolvable enmity between them. Naturally, it was difficult for them to ask Su Fong for those mirage images. Su Fong suddenly transmitted his thoughts to the two of them. I'm also a disciple of Dongxin Daozu. I will directly hand over the mirage images that are useful to Heaven Pavilion to Master Daozu. As for those from the three highest profound sects, I will give them to Gu Qianqi. Supreme martial artists Spring Autumn and Great Elder Zhangsun were shocked, pleasantly surprised, and then extremely ashamed. The two of them cupped their fists and bowed respectfully to Su Fong at the same time. Su Fong, do you have the mirage images of that divine realm foreign race artifact refiner refining the Xian Bao? A Dao Void Realm cultivator suddenly asked. This Dao Void Realm expert came from a rather famous artifact refiner sect in the entire Jiushuan Divine region. Moreover, he cultivated the Dao of artifact refinement. Naturally, he wanted to obtain the mirage images that were related to artifact refinement. Of course. Su Fong nodded and said, Then, he looked at the other Tao Void Realm experts. I, Su Fong, have everything that you don't have. Whoosh, everyone was shocked. Other than the 5 divine tribes of Middle Mystery and the other forces that had a grudge against Su Fong, the other Tao Void Realm cultivators all surrounded Su Fong's thought image. Next, Su Fong used hundreds of mirage images to exchange for a large amount of treasures and resources. However, Su Fong did not demand an exorbitant price. The mirage image that the weapon refining sect wanted, Su Fong only asked them to help him refine a profound artifact, and the materials were all provided by Su Fong himself. It was the pair of 4 limbs of the ice praying mantis that he had obtained in the Ice Soul Sacred region. The treasures and resources that they obtained from trading with other Void Dao experts were all things that they could afford and would not hurt them at all. Ling Xiao and the other Void Dao experts of the Wine Saint Peak, as well as the Void Dao experts of the Heaven-Breaking Peak, Su Fong even gave them away for free. Of course, it wasn't because Su Fong had suddenly become generous. It was because he knew very well that if he extorted these Void Dao experts too ruthlessly, they would surely bear a grudge against Su Fong. Not only did these Void Dao experts possess shocking strength, they also represented the various great powers of the human race. If he completely offended all of them, then it would be difficult for him to move a single step in the Jiuquan God domain in the future. If he obtained too many treasures, it would also attract the envy of countless people, and there would certainly be endless troubles in the future. Another reason was the words that Shi Xian Daozu said before he left. The eruption of the chaos tide this time belonged to the entire human race, and Su Fong did not dare to monopolize it alone. That would damage his own luck. Rather than that, it was better to give away half of those mirage images. Not only would he gain the favor of many experts and forces, making them owe him a big favor, it would also be a great help to the human race. Although Su Fong did not demand an exorbitant price, there were many Void Dao experts. Together, Su Fong would obtain a shocking amount of treasures and resources. With such a large number of benefits, why wouldn't Su Fong be happy? After trading with many Void Dao experts, they were all delighted, and many Void Dao experts were endlessly grateful to Su Fong. The Void Dao experts of the 5 great god tribes of Middle Xian, Qi Tian Divine Region, Hong Tian Divine Region, and Kafinyang Master were all extremely jealous. It was not that they did not want to trade with Su Fong, but they knew that with Su Fong's character, even if they offered great benefits, he would not trade with them. Moreover, these people had other plans in mind. If they could suppress Su Fong, wouldn't the treasures, resources, and the mirage images that he had memorized be easily obtained? Especially Hu Lingyi, Yi Wuji, Coffin Young Master, and the others. Their eyes were filled with greed and killing intent when they looked at Su Fong. While Su Fong was trading with the Void Dao experts, many Dao saints at the highest point of the Tide-Observing Pavilion were also trading, each taking what they needed. This saint needs the mirage images of those peak Dao saints when they were comprehending the astronomical phenomena. I wonder if anyone can memorize that mirage. This saint will exchange it with great treasures. When Yin Patian mentioned the mirage images that he wanted, the Dao saints immediately fell silent. In the time mirage that appeared when the second heaven tide erupted, there were many mirages of foreign race Dao saints fighting and cultivating. However, the Dao saints present were all focused on memorizing those that were related to their own cultivation. They did not have the time to be distracted by other mirages. Yin Patian cultivated the great Dao of formless. The mirage images of peak Dao saints comprehending the astronomical phenomena were of great help to his cultivation, but it might not be useful to other Dao saints. Yin Patian was greatly disappointed. The red-haired middle-aged man from Qi Tian Divine Region suddenly spoke. This seat coincidentally remembered some of it. Although it is not complete, it will definitely be of great use to you. Yin Patian was pleasantly surprised. Is that so? The red-haired middle-aged man smiled. Why would this seat lie to you? However, if you want that mirage, you'll have to pay a corresponding price. According to this seat's knowledge, you have a talisman that Lord Daozu of Shixian personally created. And this seat cultivates talismans? Ji Dao, you took out a Daozu talisman? This seat will give you the mirage. How about it? In Potion's divine light changed instantly. Before he could speak, the head elder of punishments roared. In Patian, you must not. That talisman of yours? It contains the true meaning of Supreme Shi Xian's great Dao. It is more important than a king grade Xian Bao. How can you take it out to trade? This saint knows what to do. There is no need for head elder of punishments to remind me. In Patian snorted coldly. Then he said decisively to the red-haired middle-aged man from Qitian divine region, change your conditions. The talisman that master gave me? This saint will not give it to anyone else. That's a pity. The red-haired middle-aged man chuckled and had no intention of continuing the trade. He was clearly interested in the talisman that Shi Xian Daozu had created. He was determined to get it and use it to threaten In Patian. In Patian could only sigh helplessly. Tuo Qianji suddenly said, In Patian, according to this seat's knowledge, you and Su Fong are martial brothers and have an extraordinary relationship. Why don't you ask if Su Fong has it? In Patian was dazed. Su Fong? The red-haired Dao saint from Qitian divine region sneered. Su Fong is just a Dao profound cultivator. He can also comprehend a Dao saint-level mirage. Hupa and the Yi clan Dao saints sneered in disdain. Tuo Qianji said, I saw the light circle that appeared when Su Fong was comprehending the nightmare statue. It was only broken at the last moment. He might have a Tao saint-level mirage, or even a Tao ancestor-level mirage. He might even have it. How is that possible? The Dao saints all shook their heads and laughed. Little junior brother, please come up. In Patian sent a message to Su Fong. Su Fong's main body flew out of the Fuyao cave and came to the highest point of the tide viewing pavilion. Without waiting for Su Fong to bow to the sovereign and the others, In Patian asked impatiently, Su Fong, senior brother wants to ask you, which Dao saint-level mirage did you comprehend? Su Fong shook his head and smiled. In Patian couldn't help but be disappointed. Who knew that Su Fong would continue to ask? Those Dao saint-level mirage images are all in my head. Does senior brother In Patian want them all, or just one of them? All the Dao saints were dazed and then sneered in disdain. They obviously thought that Su Fong was boasting. In Patian held on to a glimmer of hope. Senior brother, I only need the mirage image of the peak Dao saint level. Senior brother, please accept it. Su Fong condensed the mirage image into a rune talisman and gave it to In Patian. In Patian grabbed it and was instantly overjoyed. The image in the jade scroll was not only clear, but also complete. Compared to the incomplete mirage that the red-haired Dao saint from Qitian divine region had mentioned, the quality was definitely several times higher. This time, all the Dao saints were moved. They looked at Su Fong with shock and disbelief. In Patian was overjoyed and asked, Little junior brother, tell me what you want. Su Fong said decisively, I obtained these mirage images without any effort. Since they are useful to senior brother, how can I ask senior brother for anything? Senior brother, I won't be polite with you. In Patian laughed happily, causing many Dao saints to be filled with jealousy. The red-haired old man from Qitian divine region looked at Su Fong with green eyes. He wanted nothing more than to swallow Su Fong whole. At the same time, everyone was shocked. Su Fong was able to comprehend such a high level of time mirage, and from the looks of it, he seemed to have most of it. Thus, everyone looked at Su Fong with burning eyes. The first elder of punishment shouted at Su Fong, the time mirages you obtained should all belong to Shi Xian Mountain. How can you trade them with others so casually? Although In Patian is an elder of Shi Xian Mountain, you should first give them to the sect before the sect gives them to him. How can you give them to him without permission? What do you think of the sect? I gave all the mirages I obtained to the sect. Su Fong couldn't help but chuckle, and then he asked in reply, the punishment elder comprehended many mirages as well. I wonder if you handed them over to the sect first, or did you make a deal with other experts? The first elder of punishments was speechless. Just as Su Fong had said, he had indeed obtained many high-level mirages. Moreover, he had traded with other Dao saints and gained a lot. Su Fong had been holding back his anger at the punishment hall for a long time. If he didn't vent it now, when would he? He continued aggressively. The mirages I obtained should be given to the sect, but the first elder of punishments can trade with others. Could it be that the sect's laws are set for Su Fong alone and only bind Su Fong? The first elder of punishments was suppressed by Su Fong. He quibbled, "I am the first elder of punishments and am in charge of Xixian Mountain's punishments." Chapter 3064. The first elder of punishments was speechless. Back then, the punishment hall went too far and didn't even give me a token. Now you want to take the mirage that I worked so hard to get from me. Isn't that laughable? Su Fong was unforgiving. His sharp words made the first elder of punishment's face pale, but he could not refute him. That day in the punishment hall, I said in front of everyone that I am representing Su Fong in the Chaos Tide treasure hunt. Therefore, I will not hand over any of the treasures I get, including you, the first elder of punishments. Don't even think about getting a single treasure from me. Su Fong said domineeringly. His voice showed the power of a strong cultivator. Su Fong, don't forget that you are now a cultivator of Xixian Mountain unless you want to betray Xixian. The first elder of punishments was angry and used his identity to suppress Su Fong. At this time, the sovereign who had been silent suddenly said, "Junior brother Su Fong, if this sovereign wants to make a deal with you, are you willing? A deal?" Even the sovereign proposed to make a deal with Su Fong instead of directly asking for it. This surprised the Impatian and the other Xixian Dao saints. The first elder of punishments felt like he had been slapped in the face and had to shut up again. In terms of cultivation, the first elder of punishments was a bit higher than the sovereign. In terms of status, he was the first elder. If the three first elders worked together, they could even depose the sovereign. However, the sovereign controlled the entire Xixian Mountain and had real power. In the future, he might surpass the peak of Dao Saint and become a Daozu. The first elder of punishments did not have this possibility. Now that the sovereign came out, he was clearly speaking for Su Fong. The first elder of punishments realized that he thought the sovereign was purposely suppressing Su Fong. Now it seemed that he was wrong. Su Fong sent a message to the sovereign. "What kind of mirage does senior brother sovereign want?" The sovereign's eyes flashed. "This sovereign needs the mirage of the Daozu. Do you have it?" "Of course there is. Not only this mirage, but the other two mirages of Daozu, refining pills and treasures, are all in my memories. When the heavenly tide is over, I will naturally give them all to senior brother sovereign." "Is that true?" The sovereign's eyes lit up and he asked, "What are your conditions?" Su Fong replied, "The Xixian Mountain is Master's Xixian Mountain, and you are my senior martial brother. It is only right that I offer the three mirages to senior martial brother. Why would I mention any conditions? I only hope that senior brother sovereign won't punish me by standing in the future. If everyone in the Western Mystery Mountain thinks that senior brother sovereign is suppressing me, then I, junior brother, will be satisfied. Brat, it seems you understand Master's intentions. I just didn't expect you to hold a grudge." The sovereign chuckled. "Lung Qingyue will be your concubine. Are you satisfied now?" The sovereign looked at Su Fong and shook his head with a smile. Then he disappeared into the void and left the tide-watching pavilion. "Let Lung Qingyue be my concubine." Thinking of that arrogant woman, Su Fong felt a chill down his spine. Su Fong, the Hu people's Dao Saint, Hu Pe, looked at Su Fong and said. Su Fong said indifferently, "What is it?" Hu Pe said, "As long as you give the three mirages of the Daozu experts to the Hu people, this seat promises you that the Hu people will not make things difficult for you in the future. Hu people will not pursue the matter of you killing the only son of my clan leader, Hu Yufei, and destroying Hu Ditian's body. The Daozu mirages? Impossible. Even us Dao saints can't comprehend the three Daozu mirages. Su Fong is just a Dao profound cultivator. How can he memorize the Daozu mirages?" The other Dao saints were all shocked and surprised. They found it hard to believe that Su Fong had the mirages of the Daozu experts. Su Fong smiled non-committally. Hu Pe said coldly, "Don't even think about denying it. What else could make the sovereign so excited other than the three Daozu experts' mirages? Although the seat doesn't know what method you used, you must have memorized the three Daozu mirages. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All the Dao saints looked at Su Fong. Even the first elder of punishments looked at Su Fong with a burning gaze. The mirages of normal Dao saints were not very useful to them. As for the other mirages, with their strength, they would be able to comprehend them on their own or obtain them from other Dao saints. The mirages of the Daozu experts were very important to the cultivation of these Dao saints. Unfortunately, no one could comprehend them. How could the Dao saints not be surprised that Su Fong had the mirages of the Daozu experts? Su Fong looked at Hu Pe and said coldly, "Hu people will not pursue the matter if I take out the mirages? Lord Hu Pe, are you begging me or threatening me?" Hu Pe said domineeringly, "Hu people never beg others when they want a treasure." Su Fong laughed coldly. "It seems like you're threatening me. I have indeed comprehended the mirages of the Daozu experts. However, why should I give it to Hu people? I, Su Fong, am least afraid of threats. I was not afraid when I was in the central, profound divine territory. Why should I be afraid now?" Hu Po's expression darkened. He said darkly, "Do you know the consequences of rejecting Hu people? Hu Pe, don't forget that this is the Western profound divine territory." In Patian shouted angrily at Hu Pe. The other Dao saints of the Western profound mountain looked at Hu Pe with unfriendly expressions. Tua Qinji also said coldly, "Hu Pe, don't forget that Su Fong is the disciple of Dongxian Supreme. If you dare to do anything to him, the Eastern profound divine territory will not let Hu people off easily." Hu Pe snorted. It was obvious that he did not take the threats of the Dao saints seriously. Su Fong looked at Hu Pe and said coldly, "If I use the mirages of the Daozu experts as the price to ask the Dao saints to kill Lord Hu Pe, I think many Dao saints will rush to kill you. Won't they?" As soon as he said this, some of the Dao saints looked at Hu Pe with unfriendly gazes. Hu Po's expression changed instantly. He said angrily, "Su Fong, you are just a small Dao profound cultivator. How dare you threaten me?" Su Fong said, "How the Hu people treated me, I, Su Fong, will return it tenfold. As long as the Hu people can do it, I, Su Fong, can do it too. If you don't believe me, Lord Hu Pe, why don't you try?" Hu Po's face darkened. He did not say anything else. Right at this moment, Xian Zheng spoke out, "Su Fong, which one of those alien Dao fathers did you comprehend was that mirage? If it is useful to me, I will not be stingy with my treasures." Su Fong smiled embarrassedly. "The mirage that I saw was the Daozu refining pills. I am afraid it is not useful to Lord Xianzheng. Of course, he had to hide some of it. He could not take it all out. Otherwise, he would become a piece of meat in the eyes of these Dao saints. He would not be able to live a peaceful life in the future." The other Dao saints were also disappointed. It was obvious that the mirage was not useful to them. The Yi Clan Dao saint asked in surprise, "Su Fong, did you really refine the mirage of the Daozu into pills?" The Yi Clan was best at pills and talismans? It was no wonder that he was so eager. "Of course," Su Fong said confidently. Then he smiled embarrassedly. "Could it be that the Yi Clan wants to be like Lord Hu Pe and threaten me to hand over the mirage?" The Yi Clan Dao saint said, "The Yi Clan has always been peaceful and fair. Why would we threaten you? If you really have that mirage, I promise that not only will I forget all the grievances between you and the Yi Clan, you can also ask for any other conditions." This Dao saint clearly understood that using force against Su Fong would not work. He could only use soft methods. Thus, he appeared very sincere. Su Fong was surprised. At this moment, Yin Patian sent a message to Su Fong. "Su Fong, why don't you agree to the Yi Clan's terms? If you do not hand over the mirage, the Yi Clan will not give up. They can even take the chance to ask for some benefits." "Fine." Su Fong thought for a while and said decisively, "Since the Yi Clan is so sincere, it would be unreasonable of me to not agree. I don't want any other treasures. I only want the drop of Daozu's blood that Yi Wuji obtained from the chaos tide." Su Fong had his eyes on that drop of Daozu's blood long ago. Unfortunately, it was taken away by Yi Wuji. Now that the Yi clan had delivered themselves to him, how could he not take the chance to ask for more? The Yi clan's Dao Saint frowned. Daozu's blood was obtained by Yi Wuji. I cannot take it from him. Su Fong continued. I still have 3 mirages of foreign Dao Saints cultivating and refining pills. They are all at the peak of the Dao Saint stage. I can take them all out in exchange for that drop of Daozu's blood. If the Yi clan does not agree, then I have nothing to say. Deal. The Yi clan's Dao Saint's eyes flashed. He immediately agreed and then sent a message to Yi Wuji. Soon, Yi Wuji arrived at the highest point of the tide-observing pavilion. Yi Wuji was filled with joy when he obtained that drop of Daozu's blood. However, when he heard that the Yi clan's Dao Saint wanted him to take out the blood to exchange for the mirage with Su Fong, Yi Wuji felt as if he had been doused in ice water. His entire body turned cold. Yi Wuji, I know that doing this will put you in a difficult position. However, the mirage of the foreign race's Dao ancestor refining pills is very important to the Yi clan. It is even related to the rise and fall of the Yi clan. Moreover, there are also 3 mirages of the foreign race's peak Dao Saint experts cultivating and refining pills. With these mirages, the supernatural powers and pills of our clan will definitely improve tremendously. It is not impossible for us to use this opportunity to surpass the Hu clan. The Yi clan's Dao Saint sent a message to Yi Wuji. After a round of persuasion, Yi Wuji could only grit his teeth and take out that drop of Daozu's blood. Su Fong handed a total of 4 jade scrolls to the Yi clan's Dao Saint. Then, he took the drop of Daozu's blood. After obtaining such a powerful treasure, Su Fong was overjoyed. The Yi clan's Dao Saint was also very satisfied. He nodded at Su Fong and smiled. Only Yi Wuji felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. He hated Su Fong to the bone. Su Fong took Daozu's blood and flew down to the spell altar. Chapter 3065. Su Fong flipped his right hand and grabbed the drop of Daozu's blood. As soon as the seal was undone, a majestic aura of life spread out. Just the aura alone made Su Fong's dispirited spirit hale and hearty. Buzz, buzz. Sensing the majestic aura of life from Daozu's blood, the heaven-piercing Blood King vine in Su Fong's body began to tremble violently and was about to rush out of his body. Gue Ge, who was deep within his body, was also stirring restlessly. Obviously, she was also attracted by Daozu's blood. This drop of Daozu's blood is indeed a great treasure. Su Fong's eyes became incomparably hardy as he suppressed the heaven-piercing Blood King vine. At the same time, he released his thoughts to appease Gue Gue. With this drop of Daozu's blood essence, it was enough to quickly restore the lifespan he had consumed. After all, his life and the heaven-piercing Blood King vine would undergo an astonishing transformation. Originally, Su Fong thought that it was a pity that he couldn't get this drop of Daozu's blood. Now that he had Daozu's blood, how could he not be happy? However, he couldn't directly fuse with this drop of Daozu's blood for the time being because it still contained an astonishing aura of the heavenly tribulation. Obviously, the Daozu expert was killed by the heavenly tribulation when he was trying to break through to a higher level. Therefore, the blood contained the aura of the heavenly tribulation. Su Fong shuddered just thinking about a heavenly tribulation that surpassed Daozu's. Therefore, he had to dissolve the aura of the heavenly tribulation first. Otherwise, Su Fong's body wouldn't be able to contain such a terrifying aura. He released a stream of primordial energy from his palm and enveloped the blood. The primordial energy in Su Fong's Dao Palace had already grown to a ball of 3 feet in size. It wasn't like before where it would be completely exhausted after one use. Therefore, he didn't have to worry much about using it. The primordial energy seeped into the blood and quickly fused with the aura of the heavenly tribulation before refining it. At the same time, Daozu's blood would contain Su Fong's aura. Fusing with this drop of Daozu's blood would be very easy. It took Su Fong 3 days to completely refine the aura of the heavenly tribulation in this drop of Daozu's blood. Next, it was time to fuse with the drop of Daozu's blood. Su Fong raised his right hand. His index finger quickly turned into a blood vine and pierced into the blood. Sizzle. The blood vine greedily absorbed the blood, and in the blink of an eye, it had absorbed 1/10 of the blood. Boom! An incomparably majestic life force instantly surged and surged within his body like a mountain torrent. Su Fong felt as if his entire body was expanding, as if he was about to explode. He hurriedly urged the heaven-piercing Blood King Rot Tan, and countless blood threads crazily devoured the life force. Hoo-hoo! The flames of life burned furiously in every corner of Su Fong's body, causing his life force to recover at an astonishing rate. His white hair quickly turned from white to black, and finally became glossy black. The originally somewhat dispirited life force also began to become full of vitality at this moment. Every cell and every strand of hair was flashing with astonishing spiritual light. Su Fong had a feeling that his entire life force was crazily improving. His body and soul were both transforming. Layers of impurities seeped out of his skin under the impact of the life force. It felt as if he was advancing, but there was no tribulation aura, tribulation fire, or the impact of the advancement force. The transformation of the heaven-piercing Blood King Rot Tan was even more astonishing. Its blood threads became tougher, and its life force became more vast. It drove Su Fong's life force to become even stronger. When the burning life force in his body calmed down, Su Fong felt as if he had been reborn. A layer of black impurities had accumulated on his body, and it was incomparably stinky. He hurriedly urged the mysterious sun fire to surge out of his body and incinerate the impurities on the surface of his skin. Calculating with his fingers, it took him a total of half a month to refine 1/10 of Daozu's blood. In just half a month, Su Fong had not only completely recovered, but his entire body had also undergone an astonishing transformation. His body had become even more vast, and his life force had also become incomparably boundless. Even his soul origin, Su Fong could feel that it had become stronger. As for the heaven-piercing Blood King Rot Tan, Su Fong raised his right arm, and his entire arm instantly transformed into a thick blood vine. With a whoosh, it wriggled out like a blood-colored lightning bolt. The blood vine pierced through the layers of array formations inside Fu Yao's cave abode and transformed into blood threads. It quickly penetrated through the interior of the artifact without any obstruction. The heaven-piercing Blood King Rot Tan's terrifying ability to pierce through the heavens and earth had become even more astonishing. Su Fong estimated that although it was still not as strong as the heaven-piercing Blood King Rot Tan's main body, it was not far off. With such a powerful heaven-piercing Blood King Rot Tan, even if I encounter a powerful enemy at the level of a Dao Saint, I will still have the power to fight. If I can completely devour this drop of Daozu's blood, my heaven-piercing Blood King Rot Tan will become even stronger. If I encounter the main body again, I will not be completely helpless. If the heaven-piercing Blood King Rot Tan became even stronger, it would also mean that Su Fong's strength would also increase. This made him very happy and, at the same time, gave rise to a strong sense of confidence in his heart. Other than the heaven-piercing Blood King Rot Tan, I still have Gui Gui and the heaven-devouring insect that can eat. Thinking about the gray beetle that could eat incomparably, Su Fong felt a headache coming on. Then, he took out less than 1/10 of the remaining Daozu's blood and gave it to Gui Gui to devour. Gui Gui continuously devoured all kinds of blood and poison, especially the mercury spirit. At this moment, its strength was definitely not weaker than the heaven-piercing Blood King Rot Tan. If it devoured more of Daozu's blood, it would become even more astonishing. There was also the heaven-devouring insect that was called the heaven-devouring insect. Although Su Fong didn't know what kind of powerful ability it had, just its ability to eat was already extremely shocking. when fighting against a powerful enemy, that insect would probably be able to eat even a king-grade xianbao. However, that fellow really can eat too much. There will be a day when it will eat until it collapses. No wonder Master didn't nurture it himself. That insect could probably devour the entire Western Black Mountain, but he gave it to me. Su Fong shook his head and bitterly smiled. He took out all kinds of spiritual items, gems, and other resources that he had exchanged for with the Time Mirage and swept them into the chaotic whirlpool that sealed the gray beetle. Creak, creak, creak. When the gray beetle saw those resources, it immediately cried out excitedly and rushed over to devour them. In less than 10 breaths, all the resources that were comparable to the entire wealth of a small sect were devoured. Not even a speck was left. When Su Fong saw this, he could only bitterly smile. The third heaven tide is about to erupt. I wonder what kind of treasure will erupt this time. Su Fong sealed the remaining Daozu's blood. With his current cultivation, he could only devour this much. If he devoured any more, his physical body would not be able to withstand it. Before long, the third heaven tide would erupt. Su Fong's heart was filled with anticipation. About 3 months later, the chaotic void where the heaven tide surged suddenly became silent. The place where the heaven tide erupted also returned to normal. However, in this silence, an astonishing explosion was brewing. All the cultivators who were searching for treasures in the heaven tide all returned to the altars. Staying in the chaotic void when the heaven tide erupted was tantamount to courting death. Even the experts guarding the chaotic void all completely retreated thousands of miles away. The boundary outside the tide-observing pavilion was reinforced by the first elder of the punishment hall. Everyone was very nervous and also very expectant. Rumble, rumble. The chaotic void within thousands of miles suddenly shrunk. The entire void seemed to have collapsed. Immediately after that, a chaotic tide erupted and shot tens of thousands of kilometers into the air. The chaotic void trembled and created layers of waves that were hundreds of miles high. They spread out in all directions like raging waves. It looked extremely terrifying. Even Dao saints did not dare to face such a terrifying heaven tide directly. If they were hit head-on, they would die on the spot. Many cultivators were trembling. In front of such a terrifying heavenly might, everyone felt small and insignificant. The divine light of the Tao saints changed instantly. They all used their divine powers to reinforce the boundary in front of them. Rumble. Under the impact of the heaven tide, the entire tide-observing pavilion was undulating like leaves. The boundary started to shatter layer by layer. The heaven tide that swept over was blocked by the layers of defense that the Tao saints used. This lasted for half an hour before it gradually calmed down. The erupting heaven tide had already retreated to thousands of miles. The surrounding chaotic void was still shaking violently. However, it was no longer a fatal threat to the cultivators. In the erupting heaven tide, there were fragments of different sizes. Among them were countless treasures. There were corpses of foreign race experts, some divine wood, precious stones, and some incomplete statues. Among these treasures, although there was no supreme treasure like Daozu's blood, there were many of them. They far surpassed the previous 2 heaven tides. With so many treasures, all the cultivators' eyes became incomparably sharp. They were filled with greed and desire. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. When the heaven tide subsided, the cultivators on the altar rushed out one by one and started to crazily snatch the treasures. Su Fong was about to move when he sensed that someone was sensing his aura. It was none other than Hu Lingyi, Yi Wuji, Duan Jiren, and the young master of the heavenly coffin. Previously, I obtained countless treasures from other cultivators. I also obtained a drop of Daozu's blood. The powerful Void Dao experts of the 5 great god tribes, Hong Tian Divine Realm and Chi Tian Divine Realm, did not obtain any benefits from me. Naturally, they hate me to the core and want to kill me to snatch my treasures. And the young master of the heavenly coffin. They all think that I'm a profound Dao cultivator and a fat sheep that they can plunder. If they dare to attack me during the heaven tide, I'll make them regret it for the rest of their lives. And the young master of the heavenly coffin, I didn't have the chance to deal with you before. This time, I'll definitely teach you a lesson. The current me is not the same as before I came to Xixian. Su Fong sneered in his heart and flew out of the altar. In Patian suddenly transmitted his consciousness. Su Fong, you've already obtained enough treasures. Why do you want to join in the fun of the third heaventide? Chapter 3066. As soon as he stepped into the primal chaos region, terrifying shackles and shockwaves swept over from all directions. Su Fong hurriedly activated the token and released a protective divine aura. Only then did the shackles around him weaken significantly. However, the shackles were still shocking. Although he could fly calmly, he could not teleport. He flew straight towards the source of the primal chaos heavenly tide. In less than half an hour, whoosh, a surge of primal chaos heavenly tide swept out the skeleton of a foreign race expert that looked like it was carved out of white jade. The aura it emitted was shockingly at the peak of the divine saint realm. My luck is indeed not bad. Su Fong was pleasantly surprised to encounter such a fortune right after entering the primal chaos heavenly tide. Not only did the skeleton of the foreign race expert contain the essence of life, but there were also naturally formed heavenly marks inside and outside the skeleton, which contained boundless great Tao mysteries. Moreover, the stronger the foreign race life form was, the more complex and profound the heavenly marks would be. Human cultivators would be able to obtain shocking benefits from comprehending and cultivating. This foreign race divine saint skeleton was also a precious treasure, comparable to an ordinary king grade Xianbao. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Su Fong was about to fly over and collect the foreign race expert skeleton when 3 void Dao experts charged out from the right. Su Fong. The 3 of them originally looked like they would not give up until they got the treasure. However, when they saw Su Fong, the 3 of them stopped at the same time. Since Su Fong saw this treasure first, then it's yours. I'll withdraw. An expert from the northern profound divine domain cupped his fists and smiled at Su Fong, then flew into the depths of the primal chaos heavenly tide. I owe you a huge favor for the deal with the mirage earlier. If I were to fight with you for the treasure now, wouldn't I be worse than a pig or a dog? Su Fong, the treasure is yours. The other void Dao expert also cupped his fists at Su Fong, then left embarrassedly. Su Fong, I can't win against you. I'll just give it to you. The last void Dao expert was even more straightforward. He grinned at Su Fong and waved his hand heroically. The skeleton flew towards Su Fong. Thanks a lot. Su Fong was not surprised at all. He swept out a wave of divine might and was about to collect the corpse of the foreign race expert. Boom! Little did they know a white steel ring suddenly appeared and released a distorted divine might that enveloped the Dao Saint's corpse. Shortly after, the steel ring and the corpse disappeared without a trace. More than 10 silhouettes arrived on the chaotic airflow. They were none other than Hu Lingyi, Hu Chong, and other Hu people cultivators. Hu Lingyi, you dare to steal my treasure? Su Fong's eyes instantly froze. When the void Dao expert who gave the treasure to Su Fong saw this, he quickly left, afraid that he would get into trouble. I've been watching you this entire time. Not only do I want to steal your treasure, but I also want to steal all of your treasures, as well as all of your time mirages. Are you going to hand it over yourself? Or do you want me to suppress you and search your soul? Hu Lingyi looked at Su Fong with a disdainful attitude. It was as if everything was under his control, and the aura of a sovereign arose spontaneously. Hu Chong also sneered and said, that bunch of idiots only know how to stare at the treasures in the chaotic heavenly tide. They actually forgot that you, Su Fong, are a treasure mountain right now. What qualifications does a mere Dao, profound realm, and have to obtain so much good fortune? My clan's Dao Saint expert asked you for it, and you actually dare to threaten him. You're courting death. All of the good fortune that you obtained was just to help us, Hu people. Why aren't you surrendering now? Hu Lingyi shouted domineeringly and reached out to grab Su Fong. His thoughts turned into a supreme divine might that could dominate heaven and earth and suppress Su Fong. Blood Prison, Soul, Slashing Blade. Su Fong activated his blood demon Dharma body and condensed his thoughts with his killing aura and will. A blood-red blade light instantly swept out and collided with Hu Lingyi's divine might. Boom, boom, boom. Su Fong was impacted by the aftermath of the collision until he staggered, clearly falling into a disadvantageous position. He deliberately suppressed his cultivation to Upper Dao Profound Realm at this time. The attack that he executed was naturally hard to match Hu Lingyi, this Upper Dao Void Realm peak powerhouse. Hu Lingyi sneered disdainfully. To be able to contend with this seat with Dao Profound cultivation, you're indeed somewhat not simple. However, you're still unable to withstand a single blow. Su Fong sensed that there were quite a few powerhouses rushing over here and did not wish to get entangled with Hu people. Urging his wasp wings to Xian Bao, he pushed aside the chaotic airflow and swiftly flew away. Why did he need to personally take action to capture this brat? Hu Lingyi was just about to chase after. Hu Cheng was eager to render meritorious service. His figure flashed, and he actually rushed straight for Su Fong. Due to being shackled by the chaotic airflow in the area where the heavenly tide erupted, it was difficult to teleport, and it was difficult to execute formidable divine abilities from a long distance. Moreover, the Hu people intended to capture Su Fong alive, so Hu Cheng intended to directly close in on him and suppress him. Hu Cheng's movement technique was extremely shocking. He took 3 steps in succession and quickly caught up to Su Fong to be less than 300 m away from him. Hand over your treasures, and I'll spare your life. Hu Cheng roared complacently as he urged his Imperial Jade Seal to Xian Bao with the intention of suppressing Su Fong. I originally didn't want to kill you for destroying your Hu people's Dao Lord Realm Dao child. However, since you're so impatient to die, then don't blame me, Su Fong. Su Fong laughed coldly with disdain, and then he waved his hand to sweep out a blood vine. Hu Cheng did not have the consciousness to react at all, and it instantly bound him tightly. The might of Hu Cheng's Imperial Jade Seal to Xian Bao and his defense were unable to obstruct the blood vine in the slightest, and the strands of blood swiftly penetrated his body. Hiss! The sky-piercer blood vine devoured madly, and in a short period of 3 breaths of time, Hu Cheng had transformed into a dried corpse. Hu people have to get another Dao, Profound Realm Dao child. If you're courting death, then Hu people have to get another Dao Void Realm Dao child. Su Fong ridiculed as he looked at Hu Lingyi, who charged over, and then the wings on his back flickered rapidly as he flashed into the chaotic airflow. Su Fong, you killed my Hu people's Dao child. Hu people will surely skin you alive and pull out your tendons. Hu Lingyi shouted furiously with a murderous look on his face. Bang! Su Fong hadn't fled far when a bloody light that revealed an extremely evil aura rumbled as it descended and enveloped him within it. The bloody light swiftly transformed into the image of a coffin, and it sealed Su Fong's body and even sealed his vitality. Heavenly Coffin, young master. Su Fong gnashed his teeth. Heavenly Coffin, young master, I didn't go looking for you, but you actually took the initiative to provoke me. You're courting death. As expected, Heavenly Coffin, young master, who had changed his appearance, appeared 3,000 meters away. Whoosh, another figure charged out of the chaotic airflow and roared furiously at Su Fong. Su Fong returned this seat's Daozu blood. It turned out to be the Yi clan's Dao Void Realm Dao child, Yi Wuji. Clearly, he had been eyeing Su Fong for a long time. Yi Wuji, everyone who sees Su Fong's treasure has a share. How can you take it all for yourself? A young man leaped out and blocked Yi Wuji. He was a peak Dao Void Realm expert from the Hong Tian Divine Realm, Duan Jiren. Duan Jiren, since everyone who sees Su Fong's treasure has a share, then this seat naturally has to get a share as well. A domineering laughter rang out, and Feng Zhou of the Hong Tian Divine Realm appeared. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Immediately after, the Li clan, Meng clan, and other Dao Void Realm experts from the 5 god clans of the Middle Profound Realm, Hong Tian Divine Realm, and the Hong Tian Divine Realm came from all directions and surrounded Su Fong. Looks like I've become a juicy piece of meat for these experts to fight over. Su Fong sneered disdainfully, and a fierce killing intent surged in his heart. Hu Lingyi flew over and shouted domineeringly, "Since everyone wants Su Fong's treasure, why don't we divide it evenly? Everyone will get a share of the time mirage in his memory. What do you all think? Who people have so many people, so naturally you'll get the most treasures. Hu Lingyi, you've got a good idea. Su Fong is this seat's, and no one can take it away from him." Heavenly Coffin Young Master sneered disdainfully and activated a blood coffin beside him. An evil sealing power burst out, and Su Fong and the coffin projections around him flew toward Heavenly Coffin Young Master. This seat doesn't want Su Fong's treasure, but Daozu's blood that belongs to this seat. I don't care whether he's dead or alive. Leave him here. Yi Wuji activated a peachwood sword, and a sword chi burst out. Duan Jiren sensed that the sword chi contained the power to devour souls, and couldn't help but tremble in fear. He quickly dodged to the side. Su Fong was shackled by the blood coffin projections of Heavenly Coffin Young Master. When Yi Wuji's sword chi was about to kill him, an aura of a Dao Void Realm expert gushed out from his body. Moreover, it was a terrifying aura that was 10 times more vast than that of an ordinary lower Dao Void Realm expert. It contained primordial energy and instantly shattered the shackles of the blood coffin around him, forming a defensive barrier around him. Chi. Yi Wuji's sword chi collided with the barrier. The barrier shook violently, but did not shatter. Immediately, Su Fong used the formless heavenly wheel and the heavenly wheel of massacre, which was used by the blood fiend armor body, rolled out. Duan Jiren was the closest to Su Fong, and was naturally the first to be hit by the heavenly wheel of massacre. He was sent flying, and his physical body was shattered. His Dao heart was also almost shattered by the fierce will of massacre. Dao Void Realm. You actually advanced to the Dao Void Realm. Duan Jiren almost spat out a mouthful of blood, and looked at Su Fong in disbelief as he shouted. Hiss! Hu Lingyi and the others were all stunned. Those who people cultivators of the Dao profound realm even sucked in a breath of cold air. How many years had passed since the Jiuquan Heaven Selection Ceremony? Su Fong actually advanced from a Dao Master Cultivator to a Dao Void Realm expert. What kind of shocking talent was this? In the past, they all thought that his cultivation was at the upper Dao profound realm, and that he relied on the accumulation of resources. Looking at it now, it was directly a joke. Moreover, Su Fong, with the cultivation of a Dao Void Realm expert, could heavily injure Duan Jiren, a peak Dao Void Realm expert. It could be seen how shocking his strength was. You want to take back Daozu's blood? Let's see if you have the qualifications to take it away. Su Fong looked at Yi Wuji and sneered disdainfully. He took a step forward and, at the same time, punched out in the air. Dong! A rumbling sound like a heavenly drum came from Su Fong's body. The violent airflow within an area of dozens of miles was immediately shaken and set off waves after waves. Puff! Yi Wuji was like a rag swept by a gale. His body was swept away together with his flying sword, and he spat out several mouthfuls of blood. His flesh was badly mangled, and his Dao palace was almost shattered by the sound of the heavenly way. He fell into a heavily injured state. My treasure! Everyone who sees it has a share. Su Fong looked at Feng Zhou and sneered. Chapter 3067. Whoosh! 10,000 thoughts converged into an aura that swept out from Feng Zhou's Dao palace. It quickly arranged itself and transformed into a 1,000-foot-long illusory rune that pressed down on Su Fong. So you've been hiding your strength. Humph! Even if you've hidden your strength, a mere lower Dao Void Realm cultivator is still an ant-like existence in front of me. You dare to kill my disciple, people. The only result is death. Hu Lingyi's killing intent was sharp and fierce. He grabbed a golden Xian sword, which burst out a golden sword light. It was filled with sacred and domineering sword intent that rushed towards Su Fong. Shameless, 2 experts at the peak of the Dao Void Realm, who even had the strength to fight against the Dao Saint expert, attacked Su Fong at the same time. It was indeed shameless to the extreme. My Master's 10-direction seal. Su Fong performed the My Master's 10-direction seal. The divine might of the 10-direction seal collided with Hu Lingyi's and Feng Zhou's attacks. The great power of the My Master's 10-direction seal completely suppressed Hu Lingyi's and Feng Zhou's attacks in terms of will, Tao rhythm, and other aspects. It shattered them into pieces. A lower Tao Void Realm cultivator can perform such a powerful divine ability. Feng Zhou and Hu Lingyi were sent flying by the aftershock. The other cultivators around them were also affected and retreated one after another. Many cultivators were shocked in their hearts. Which one of the cultivators present was not a powerful figure? Hu Lingyi, Feng Zhou, Yi Wuji, and Duan Juren were the top figures of their respective forces. They would definitely be peerless experts who would become Tao saints in the future. Su Fong, a lower Tao Void Realm cultivator, was fighting against two of them at the same level as them, and even surpassed them. How could they not be shocked by this scene? The most shocked person was young Master Celestial Coffin. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Before Su Fong entered the Western Profound Divine Domain, young Master Celestial Coffin could easily shackle Su Fong and force Su Fong to escape into the sky ditch. How many years had it been? Su Fong's current strength was completely above young Master Celestial Coffin, which made him tremble with fear. Amidst the chaotic airflow caused by the collision, Su Fong's wasp wings flapped rapidly behind him. His figure flashed out, drawing a beautiful arc as he pounced towards young Master Tian Coffin. Hu Lingyi, Feng Zhou, and the others had only intended to snatch Su Fong's treasures, but the heavenly Coffin young master had snatched his luck spider. Moreover, young Master Celestial Coffin was obviously weaker than the other peak Tao Void Realm experts. Su Fong naturally wanted to make an example out of him and take back the moving spider first. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Sealer. Young Master Tian Coffin gritted his teeth, and a crimson light flashed out of his glabella, transforming into a crimson coffin. The blood coffin was facing Su Fong, who was charging at him. The lid of the coffin suddenly slid open, and an evil blood light burst out, enveloping Su Fong in an instant. Young Master Celestial Coffin's blood coffin was his Dharma body. There were 6 blood coffins in total, each with different abilities. They could seal the enemy's life, Taoist palaces, supernatural powers, and even fate. The blood coffin young Master Celestial Coffin was activating this blood coffin, and its ability was to seal souls. The blood light around Su Fong quickly seeped into his body, transforming into a shadow of a blood coffin around his Taoist heart. It was going to seal his Taoist heart, origin, and soul. Swish, 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 swish. Su Fong's 7-colored Vajra Taoist heart suddenly burst out a cold and dazzling rainbow light, shattering the shadow of the blood coffin. The 7-colored Vajra Taoist heart that had merged with the Icebone Jade Marrow was second only to the legendary Immortal Taoist heart. How could it be sealed by young Master Celestial Coffin's blood coffin? If Su Fong merged with the Ice Flower heart, he might be able to cultivate the legendary Immortal Taoist heart, which would be even more astonishing. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks immediately appeared on young Master Celestial Coffin's blood coffin. This person's Taoist heart has become so terrifying. Young Master Celestial Coffin looked at Su Fong with eyes full of horror, and his fighting spirit was instantly gone. He immediately put away the blood coffin, and at the same time, an illusory Xian Guang shot out from his eyes. In an instant, an aura of misfortune and decay swept towards Su Fong. Luck Spider? Young Master Celestial Coffin is using the Luck Spider against me. How could Su Fong not sense the Luck Spider's aura? He did not expect young Master Celestial Coffin to use the Luck Spider against him. He was about to use the Heavenly Secret Life shrinking technique to control the Luck Spider through the restriction planted in its fate. Su Fong found that the Luck Spider's aura was obviously much stronger than before, so he gave up on the idea. The Luck Spider's aura instantly shrouded Su Fong. With a thought, Su Fong immediately activated his purple fate spell body and used the shapeless heavenly wheel. A purple light wheel surged out from his body, and immediately shattered the Lux Spider's aura layer by layer. Looking at young Master Celestial Coffin, he had already taken the opportunity to escape without a trace. "I'll leave the Lux Spider with you for now. When you help me grow stronger, I'll go and collect it." Looking in the direction that young Master Celestial Coffin fled, Su Feng's lips curled into a cold smile. As it turned out, he found that the Lux Spider had improved tremendously in a short period of time, so he simply gave up on the idea of taking back the Lux Spider and left it with young Master Celestial Coffin. Let young Master Celestial Coffin raise it first, and when it's fattened up, not only the Lux Spider, but also young Master Celestial Coffin's head. Su Feng left a restriction in the Lux Spider's fate formed by the Heavenly Secret Life shrinking technique. As long as he was willing, he could easily regain control of it, and he was not afraid that it would betray him. Ignoring young Master Celestial Coffin, Su Feng's divine light swept over Hu Lingyi, Feng Zhou, Yi Wuji, and the others, and said indifferently, "Which one of you still wants to take my treasure?" Many cultivators were hesitant and fearful. At this moment, the heaven tide exploded again, and the chaotic airflow soared into the sky, sweeping out more treasures. "Let's take the treasures in the heaven tide first, and I'll let you be arrogant for a while." Hu Lingyi let out a cold snort and led many Hu people cultivators away embarrassedly. Everyone knew that Hu Lingyi was looking for a way out for himself. Su Feng's strength was so amazing that Hu Lingyi could not do anything to him, let alone take Su Feng's treasures and time mirage. Why did they stay here instead of leaving now? As soon as Hu Lingyi left, Yi Wuji, Feng Zhou, Duan Juren, and the others also led their subordinates away embarrassedly. "You want to take Su Feng's treasures? How can I let you off so easily?" Su Feng showed a cold and domineering smile. He had always been the kind of person who would return 2 punches when someone punched him. These people had come so aggressively to take his treasures, so how could he let them off so easily? He immediately activated his wasp wings and followed the cultivators of the 5 great god tribes, Hong Tian and Chi Tian divine realms. The third Heaventide eruption not only produced more treasures than the first, but there was also no lack of powerful treasures. There were even many king-grade treasures. Almost every one of the 100,000 cultivators had gained something, and some of the luckier ones had even obtained king-grade treasures. Moreover, they were all peerless treasures that were rarely seen in the human world. Whoosh, a heaventide current swept up a rusty iron rod and flew toward the dozen or so cultivators of the Chi Tian divine realm. That iron rod was clearly a Xian Bao of a foreign race expert. It had been buried in the foreign race's world for who knew how long, and its surface had been corroded, but its aura was extremely shocking. It was actually a king-grade Xian Bao. The cultivators of the Chi Tian divine realm were both surprised and overjoyed. They frantically rushed forward, and many cultivators from other factions tried to snatch it from them, but they were all repelled. Heaven really helps the Duan Jiren. To be able to obtain such a powerful treasure so casually. The Duan Jiren wrapped the Xian Bao in his hand and smiled widely. Little did he know, a gray beetle had crawled onto the iron rod and was crazily gnawing on it. When the Duan Jiren was about to suck the iron rod into his palm, he realized that more than a third of the iron rod had been gnawed away. What the hell is this? The Duan Jiren was both shocked and furious. The Xian Bao had clearly been destroyed. In a fit of rage, the Duan Jiren unleashed a burst of divine might from his body and sent the gray beetle flying. To his surprise, the inconspicuous gray beetle flapped its wings and flew away, as if nothing had happened after it was sent flying dozens of feet away. The cultivators of the Chi Tian divine realm were all dumbfounded. That beetle must be a foreign creature that erupted from the chaos tide. It can even swallow a king-grade Xian Bao, so it must be an extremely powerful creature. Its value must be even higher than a king-grade Xian Bao. Capture it. The Duan Jiren came to his senses and ordered everyone to capture the gray beetle. However, the gray beetle had flown into the chaos, and its aura was extremely faint. How could they possibly find it? Dozens of miles away, Su Fong stood with his hands behind his back. Buzz, the gray beetle, flew in front of him and disappeared into his body. I'm not going to snatch any treasures with you. I'm going to use your treasures to feed my beetle. A vicious glint flashed in Su Fong's eyes as he smiled smugly. The gluttonous heaven swallower beetle had cost him countless lives. Naturally, he was delighted to be able to eat other people's treasures. He continued flying forward. Half an hour later, Su Fong had found something good for the gray beetle. More than 100 Hu people and Yi clan cultivators had joined forces to snatch a 30-meter-tall rock. That rock was dark and gloomy. It emitted a gloomy, profound light and a strange, twisting power. It also faintly emitted a wisp of primordial energy. What was even stranger was that the rock couldn't be stored in one's body or Xianbao space. No matter if it was the Hu clan cultivators or the Yi clan cultivators, even though they didn't know the origins of this rock, they were clearly aware that this rock was absolutely a precious treasure, and it was even to the extent that it was even more shocking than an ordinary king gray dark treasure. They couldn't possibly carry such a large rock. The Hu and Yi clan cultivators immediately went to find Hu Lingyi and Yi Wuji. Heaven Swallower sand. No, that's not ordinary Heaven Swallower sand. It's a Heaven Swallower stone formed from extremely pure Heaven Swallower sand. Hu Lingyi and Yi Wuji were worthy of being the Dao Void Realm Taoists of the Hu and Yi clans. They could tell the origin of the rock at a glance. Heaven Swallower sand is an essential material for refining King Grade Xianbao. A small amount of Heaven Swallower sand can improve the quality of the Xianbao by several times. A Heaven Swallower stone formed from so much pure Heaven Swallower sand is definitely a peerless treasure that surpasses King Grade Xianbao. It's even more precious than Daozu's blood. The two Taoists looked at the Heaven Swallower stone with eyes that were incomparably hale and hearty. Unexpectedly, a rustling sound came from inside the Heaven Swallower stone, as if a nest of ants was hiding inside, crazily devouring the Heaven Swallower stone. Is there a monster inside the Heaven Swallower stone? Chapter 3068. Whoosh! In less than half an hour, the distorted divine power emitted by the heavenly stone rapidly weakened, and the dark Xian Guang it released also quickly dimmed. In the end, the heavenly stone shattered with a whoosh and completely turned into a pile of debris. A 1-foot-long gray beetle flew out of the debris. Hu Lingyi and Yi Wuji were already prepared. Hu Lingyi activated the steel Ring Xian Bo, which burst out a distorted divine power and instantly enveloped the gray beetle. Yi Wuji activated a rune talisman, which burst out a sealing power and was about to seal the gray beetle. They were naturally heartbroken that the heavenly stone was swallowed by the gray beetle. However, this gray beetle could even swallow the heavenly stone, so it must be an extremely powerful monster. If they caught it, its value would definitely be higher than the heavenly stone. How could the two not be excited? Who knew squeak? Squeak! The gray beetle opened its mouth and bit, tearing a big hole in the shackles of the steel Ring Xian Bo and the seal released by the rune talisman. Then it flashed out. What was more infuriating was that after the gray beetle escaped, it actually flew around Hu Lingyi and Yi Wuji before flying away calmly. The surrounding experts of the Hu and Yi clans attacked one after another, but they could not stop the gray beetle, let alone hurt it. Hu Lingyi and Yi Wuji gnashed their teeth in anger. They madly chased after the gray beetle in the direction of its escape. The heavenly stone they had obtained with great difficulty was eaten by a gray beetle of unknown origin. The gray beetle even teased them like this. How could these two experts at the peak of the Void Dao realm not be angry? However, the gray beetle not only had an amazing ability to swallow, but also the chaotic airflow could not shackle it at all. It disappeared in the blink of an eye. Hu Lingyi and Yi Wuji had to give up. What a pity! That stone must be a precious treasure, but it was eaten by this prodigal heaven-swallowing insect. That gray beetle was Su Fong's heavenly devouring beetle. His consciousness was residing in the body of the heavenly devourer insect. He could clearly sense the scene of the heavenly devourer insect devouring the heavenly stone. Seeing that the heavenly stone had been devoured by the heavenly devouring insects, Su Fong felt very regretful. He had no other choice. The Hu people and the Yi clan had so many experts. Moreover, the heavenly stone couldn't be stored in his internal space or the Xianbao's internal space. No matter how confident he was in his own strength, the chances of snatching the heavenly stone from the hands of those experts were slim. He sensed the heavenly devourer insects that had entered the Dao Palace. Su Fong discovered that the heavenly devourer insect's aura had become even more shocking. Its entire body exuded an incomparably ferocious aura, and its body had clearly changed. There were more black spots on its gray shell. It no longer looked like a gray beetle, but a spotted beetle. I wonder what will happen if the heaven-devouring insect continues to devour. Su Fong's heart was filled with curiosity. At the same time, he was filled with anticipation. Following that, Su Fong continued to control the heavenly devourer insects to wantonly devour all kinds of treasures. Most of them were the treasures obtained by the central profound divine domain's 5 great god clans, the Qi Tian divine domain and the Hong Tian divine domain's cultivators. There were a few times when the heavenly devourer insects entered the treasure's internal space and were sucked into the Dao Palace. Not only did the heavenly devourer insects devour the treasures, but they also devoured the treasures and resources of the cultivators themselves. In the end, they rushed out of the Dao Palace and calmly left. Soon, almost every cultivator who had come to snatch treasures knew that there was a strange insect in the heavenly tide that specialized in devouring treasures. Moreover, it specifically devoured the treasures of the 5 great god clans, the Qi Tian divine domain and the Hong Tian divine domain's cultivators. The cultivators of these forces were extremely unlucky. Every one of them was in a state of panic. They were constantly on guard against the strange insect. Even when they saw a treasure, they didn't dare to snatch it directly. Fortunately, the strange insect didn't harm people. Otherwise, these forces would have suffered even more losses. After devouring countless treasures, the heavenly devourer insect underwent another shocking transformation. Its entire body turned jet black and flashed with a frightening luster. The aura it emitted was even more astonishing. Just as Su Fong was searching for his next target, there was suddenly a commotion in the Dao Palace. When his consciousness entered the Dao Palace, Su Fong was pleasantly surprised. As it turned out, the heavenly devourer insect had started spitting out silk-like things as it devoured large amounts of treasures. Unlike the silk it spat out before, the silk it spat out this time was the color of chaos. Not only was it incomparably tough, it also contained pure, primordial qi. So the heavenly devourer insect eats treasures and spits out treasures as well. Su Fong looked at the silk and couldn't stop smiling. He had never imagined that the Shi Xian Daozu would give him such a wondrous treasure. Although there wasn't much silk, only the size of a walnut, it was 1,000 meters long. Moreover, the silk was incomparably tough. Su Fong used all sorts of methods, but couldn't break it. Su Fong thought of the primal chaos god binding chains that shackled holy sovereign Xieju. These silk were shockingly similar to the materials used to refine the primal chaos god binding chains. He tried to use his primordial qi to fuse with the silk. Soon, the silk melted and fused with his primordial qi, causing his primordial qi to surge and become much heavier. Su Fong finally understood why the Shi Xian Daozu had left the heavenly devourer insect to him. His goal was to use the heavenly devourer insect's ability to spit out primordial qi to help Su Fong rapidly increase his strength. This mastermind is really good to me. Su Fong understood the Shi Xian Daozu's intentions and felt a wave of gratitude. Next, Su Fong released the heavenly devourer insect and had it search for treasures while he focused on fusing with the silk. At the same time, Su Fong also tried to fuse the primordial qi in a strand of silk with a heaven-piercing blood king vine. This way, the heaven-piercing Blood King vine's penetrative and devouring abilities would become even more astonishing. As the pure primordial qi in the silk continued to fuse, the primordial qi in Su Fang's Tao Palace became even purer and heavier than before. Suddenly, the chaos tide calmed down. The erupting tide quickly receded, and the chaotic currents in the surroundings also became much quieter. Could it be that the chaos tide has ended? Su Fang looked in surprise at the place where the chaos tide had erupted. It didn't seem like it had ended. The surrounding calmness seemed to contain something unusual. Su Fang used the Eye of Future. A vertical eye suddenly split open between his brows. The three eyes flickered with unfathomable light. He had planned to use the Eye of Future to predict the future and see what changes would occur in the chaos tide. Unexpectedly, before the vertical eye between Su Fang's brows could form an image, the Xianguang suddenly shattered and blood seeped out from the vertical eye. Su Fang felt a sharp pain in his head and cried out in pain. Why can't the Eye of Future predict it? Could it be? Su Fang's heart suddenly beat wildly. Something that even the future true I could not predict was naturally because Su Fang's cultivation was too low. What was about to happen to the chaos heavenly tide was too shocking. So the future true, I could not predict anything. The treasure that is about to erupt from the chaos tide is definitely an extremely powerful treasure. Su Fang's eyes flashed with a bright light. With Su Fang's current cultivation and destiny dharma body, how could the treasure be ordinary if the Eye of Future could not see it? Swoosh! The heavenly devouring insect broke through the air and landed on Su Fang's shoulder. It seemed to have sensed something too. Its small eyes stared at the place where the chaos tide had erupted, and its body trembled slightly. It seemed to be afraid and excited at the same time. Sensing the heavenly devouring insect's emotions, Su Fang became more and more expectant. The other cultivators also sensed the abnormality and stopped looking for treasures. They all looked at the place where the chaos tide had erupted. After a dozen breaths, a chaotic aura suddenly erupted from the chaos void that had just calmed down. Unlike the chaos tide eruption that everyone expected, this chaotic aura was only 100 feet tall and less than 10 feet thick. However, this chaotic aura was filled with endless vicissitudes and an aura that seemed to come from eternity. Wrapped in the chaotic aura was something that seemed to be made of bronze. On a round plate, a divine beast and a divine bird were entangled. They raised their heads and seemed to be roaring and chirping. As a whole, it looked like a lamp holder, but it was missing the top half. The bronze treasure's aura was indeed shocking. It had surpassed the king grade Xian Bao and had a primordial aura and a supreme heavenly Tao aura. It was definitely not something that any treasure refiner could refine. This high level of Xian Bao had already surpassed Su Fang's knowledge, but Su Fang felt a sense of familiarity. Where have I seen a treasure like this before? Why is its aura so familiar? Su Fang was puzzled. The cultivators around the chaos tide did not know the treasure's height, but the many Tao saints in the tide viewing pavilion recognized it and immediately exclaimed, "That's the supreme Xian Bao. Heavens, there really is a supreme Xian Bao. That's not an ordinary supreme Xian Bao. I've seen it in an ancient stone carving of a foreign tribe. It's the legendary longevity lamp. Obtain this lamp, and you can obtain eternal life. It's a pity that only half of it is left. It's incomplete. Even if only half of it is left, it's still a supreme treasure that surpasses the king grade Xian Bao." Many Tao saints exclaimed. Xian Zheng could not control himself and started to ask about the origins of the bronze Xian Bao. The so-called supreme Xian Bao was a supreme treasure that surpassed the king grade. The supreme Xian Bao had another name, and that was the primordial heavenly treasure. It was a treasure that was born naturally from the primordial chaos and was superior to any Xian Bao refined by treasure refiners. Due to the primordial heavenly treasure's astonishing spirituality, if a cultivator directly called it a primordial heavenly treasure, it might even alarm it and cause it to immediately flee. Even the Daozu experts would not be able to find it, so cultivators usually called such a treasure the supreme Xian Bao. According to Xian Zheng, the origins of the bronze Xian Bao were even more shocking. Cultivators and cultivators, didn't they seek immortality? The primordial heavenly treasure was actually the legendary longevity lamp. With this lamp, one could obtain eternal life. What kind of amazing treasure was this? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Chapter 3069. Xianzheng suddenly shouted coldly, "All of you come back. If Dao saints enter the range of the heaven tide, they will trigger an unpredictable disaster. Furthermore, that supreme Xian Bao is such a treasure that it will sense you if you call it by its name. The moment you get close to the longevity lamp, it will immediately escape into the primal chaos. You won't be able to catch it at all." Hearing this, the Tao saints angrily returned and transmitted their divine consciousnesses to the cultivators in the primal chaos heavenly tide. Hu Lingyi, you must obtain this treasure at all costs. If you can obtain it, you will be the master of the Hu people in the future. No one will be able to replace you. After receiving Hu Po's message, Hu Lingyi looked at the bronze treasure, his eyes ablaze. Then he transmitted his divine consciousnesses to the Hu people. Everyone, do your best to help me obtain this treasure. Kill anyone who dares to stop me. Kill anyone who dares to retreat. It wasn't just the Hu people. The 5 divine tribes of the middle mystery and every cultivator in the other divine domains received the same order. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The bronze treasure in the heaven tide instantly became a juicy piece of meat in the eyes of all the cultivators. Strange. Why does the aura of that bronze treasure feel so familiar to me? Forget it. No matter what the reason is, I will do my best to obtain such a treasure. Su Fong stared at the bronze treasure, his eyes filled with confusion. Suddenly, buzz, buzz, buzz. A shocking sound suddenly came from the Jiushuan Dao Palace. It wasn't from the runes of the heavenly secret life, shrinking technique, but from a treasure. It was the bronze oil lamp known as the Destiny Binding Sky Lantern that he had obtained from Divine Lord Jin Xian. The only use of that oil lamp was to sense the aura of destiny. As long as the other party's aura was fused into the oil lamp, no matter how far away they were, as long as the oil lamp was lit, he would be able to sense the other party's location. Other than this ability, Su Fong did not find any other abilities, and it was difficult to integrate them. As such, Su Fong sealed them inside the Jiushuan Palace and did not pay much attention to them. He never expected that the oil lamp would make such a huge commotion because of the appearance of the bronze treasure. It trembled in the Jiushuan Taoist Palace of Su Fong and was about to break through the seal and fly out of the Taoist Palace. Su Fong suddenly understood. The so-called Fated Sky Lantern should be one with the bronze Xian Bao that erupted from the heavenly tide. The latter was the lamp plate of the Fated Sky Lantern. Su Fongdao was shocked and quickly cast a seal to firmly seal the life-binding sky lamp. I don't know where Godlord Jin Xian obtained this oil lamp from. It is actually one with the peerless treasure that erupted from the heavenly tide. It is clear that this treasure is fated with me. That bronze Xian Bao must belong to me, Su Fong. Su Fong looked at the bronze treasure in the heavenly tide, his eyes brimming with vigor. Whoosh, the bronze treasure fell with the heavenly tide and was swept away by a wild current, flying out of the range of the heavenly tide. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless cultivators flew toward the treasure like locusts. Boom, boom. Numerous strands of thoughts erupted with world-shocking divine might as numerous dark treasures were utilized by the numerous cultivators. Instantly, they enveloped the bronze treasure, causing numerous explosions to resound, causing the over 100 cultivators that were closest to the treasure to be transformed into powder on the spot. Swish! The bronze Xian Bao was unscathed by the astonishing attacks and was sent flying to the side. A figure suddenly leaped into the air and spread out his hands, releasing a shocking and mysterious purple qi that instantly enveloped the treasure. This seat is called Duan Juren because this seat possesses supreme luck and is protected by the heavenly Tao. This peerless treasure has come to this seat of its own accord. It is this seat's fortune, and no one can take it away from me. As it turned out, it was Duan Juren from the great heaven divine realm. He possessed astonishing luck that was even more frightening than Long Tianxi's. He had barely moved from his spot, Yet the bronze artifact had coincidentally flown in his direction. It was as if there was some mysterious force pushing the bronze artifact. How could Duan Jurin not be wild with joy when he was about to obtain such a precious treasure? Unbeknownst to him, just as he was feeling complacent, a mighty sword chi with supreme dominance swept over and blasted him away. The sword chi tore through his defenses and severed his right arm. His entire body was covered in ghastly sword wounds. Then, a steel xian bao suddenly appeared above the bronze treasure, erupting with a twisting might that instantly enveloped the treasure. Duan Jiren, although you were lucky enough to obtain this treasure, you do not have the ability to possess it. Only this seat is qualified to possess such a treasure. It turned out that Hu Lingyi had suddenly attacked and injured Duan Jiren with his sword. At the same time, he activated the steel xian bao and was about to put away the bronze treasure. Hu Lingyi's steel xian bao seemed ordinary, but was actually an extremely powerful royal-grade xian bao. It could release the power to distort space, shackle enemies and treasures, and then instantly move them to the place he wanted them to be. With Hu Lingyi's strength at the peak of the Void Dao realm, he could activate more than half of the power of the steel xian bao. Therefore, its power was astonishing. Bang! The steel xian bao wrapped around the bronze treasure and instantly appeared in front of Hu Lingyi. With this treasure, I will be the master of Hu people in the future. One day, I will also have the opportunity to become a supreme Daozu. Hu Lingyi's eyes flickered with endless excitement and greed. He waved his hand and was about to absorb the bronze treasure into his body. Suddenly, a peach-red sword aura swept over, causing Hu Lingyi's soul to tremble. It was actually about to leave his body and be swallowed by the sword aura. Almost at the same time, a golden palm suddenly appeared and grabbed around the steel xian bao and the bronze treasure. It was about to snatch both treasures away. Yi Wuji, Feng Zhou, you dare to snatch this seat's treasure. This seat will not let you off easily. Hu Lingyi was shocked and angry when he saw that two experts had appeared out of nowhere to snatch the treasures away from him. It was Yi Wuji of the Yi clan and Feng Zhou of the Qi Tian divine realm who had attacked at the same time. Boom! 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 The experts of the other forces also reacted at this time and used their thoughts to attack. Some of them also activated the powerful xian bao and attacked the bronze xian bao and its surroundings like a tidal wave. Hu Lingyi had no choice but to give up the treasure and quickly retreated with the xian sword. With such a shocking attack, not to mention him, even a Dao Saint expert would have to retreat. Yi Wuji and Feng Zhou's attacks were also instantly shattered under the tidal wave of attacks. The bronze treasure and Hu Lingyi's steel xian bao were both sent flying at the same time. Hu Lingyi retrieved the steel xian bao and looked at the bronze treasure that had once again fallen into the hands of many cultivators. His eyes were full of unwillingness, but there was nothing he could do. In front of the treasure, there was no friendship or status. There was only a life and death struggle. Everyone fell into a frenzy. There were people who were constantly injured and people who died. Not only those Dao Profound Realm cultivators, but there were also many Dao Void Realm experts who had fallen in such a crazy battle. Even the Dao Void Realm Daoist of the Meng clan had his physical body destroyed in the battle. Only a Dharma body was lucky enough to escape. The bloody fight and struggle lasted for the time it took to burn a stick of incense. In a short period of time, over 1,000 people lost their lives, and countless more were injured. Suddenly, the surroundings suddenly quieted down. At this moment, it was as if time and space had all stopped. A kind of silence that made everyone's heart palpitate instantly extinguished the greed in everyone's heart. The Western Mystery Mountains Punishment Elder shouted loudly, "The chaos tide has already ended. Next, there will be a tide reversal. Leave quickly, quickly." Before the tide erupted, almost every cultivator had received a piece of information about the chaos tide. Naturally, they knew what the Punishment Elder was talking about. After the chaos tide ended, there would be a phenomenon of the tide reversing, producing a shocking, attractive force. Once trapped, it would be impossible to escape. There was a possibility of being brought back to the foreign race's world by the tide. There was also a possibility of being turned into a chaotic aura in the tide. In short, as long as one was sucked into the tide reversing, there was no possibility of survival. All the cultivators who participated in the treasure snatching instantly changed their expressions. How could they still care about snatching the treasure? They madly flew towards the tide-observing pavilion. Hiss! It was as if a monster had taken a deep breath at the place where the tide erupted. The entire chaotic void shook violently, and a suction force that could devour everything suddenly erupted. The terrifying suction force caused the chaotic airflow to surge rapidly towards that place, forming a huge whirlpool that released a devouring divine power that covered the entire area. All the cultivators who were flying towards the tide-observing pavilion suddenly flew backwards. Even the tide-observing pavilion shook violently and slowly moved toward the whirlpool. Many cultivators unleashed their most powerful divine powers, activating the Xianbao. Some even burned their thoughts to stabilize themselves. The supreme Xianbao has been sucked back by the tide. A Tao saint suddenly let out a cry of surprise. Everyone turned to look. As expected, the bronze treasure was being sucked into the whirlpool by a chaotic airflow. That is my creation. No one can take it away from me, not even the tide. The Duan Jiren suddenly turned and flew towards the bronze treasure. With the help of the powerful suction force, he instantly appeared beside the bronze treasure as if he had teleported. He waved his hand and grabbed the bronze treasure in his hand, laughing out loud proudly. Little did he know, when the Duan Jiren wanted to leave, he realized that he was already near the whirlpool. The suction force here was 100 times, no, 10,000 times more terrifying than the outer area. Puff, puff, puff. Under the shocking tearing force, the Duan Jiren's defenses quickly collapsed. His physical body was instantly disintegrated into pieces and finally dissipated into blood-chi particles. Everyone was shocked. At the same time, they felt that it was a pity for the primordial heavenly treasure. Suddenly, Su Fong suddenly left the crowd and flew towards the whirlpool. When he was still 1,000 feet away from the whirlpool, he suddenly reached out and grabbed at it. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The bronze treasure trembled and released a divine power. It broke free from the suction force of the whirlpool and flew towards Su Fong. Whoosh! Everyone exclaimed in surprise. No one would have thought that the treasure could fly out on its own. It turned out that Su Fong used the life-binding Sky Lantern's aura as its source and projected it with divine power. The bronze treasure was a primordial heavenly treasure. It had its own consciousness. When it sensed the life-binding Sky Lantern's aura, it released its divine power and flew to Su Fong's side. Su Fong's purple fate Dharma body released its divine power. A mysterious purple chi enveloped the bronze treasure. At the same time, he released a surge of primordial chi and sucked the bronze treasure into his Tao palace. How can I let others have the treasure that I can't have? Su Fong, don't even think about getting it. Hu Lingyi's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. He activated the steel Ring Xianbao and suddenly appeared above Su Fong, releasing a distorted divine power. Su Fong was caught off guard and was instantly shackled by the divine power. Before he could react, the steel ring suddenly released a white Xianguang and sent Su Fong away. Chapter 3070. The suction force released by the whirlpool was so strong that even a Tao Saint expert would not be able to escape from it. Hu Lingyi's steel ring Xianbao was also a very powerful king-grade Xianbao. The space distortion it released not only trapped Su Fong, but also blocked the suction force released by the whirlpool below. However, under the suction force of the whirlpool, Su Fong was only 10 feet away from the center of the whirlpool. Hu Lingyi's steel ring Xianbao would not be able to hold on for long. It would not take long for it to break, and Su Fong would be directly swallowed by the whirlpool. At that time, there would be no way for him to survive. At this moment, Su Fong's life was hanging by a thread. Hu People Jr., you are courting death. In Patian and Tuo Qianji roared at the same time. They jumped out of the tide-watching pavilion and appeared in the area where the chaos tide was flooding. Who knew, as soon as they appeared, they immediately caused the chaos void to become chaotic. A large area collapsed in some places, and black whirlpools quickly formed. More than 10 cultivators were caught off guard and were swallowed by the black whirlpools. The chaos tide had a great restriction on Tao saints. As long as a cultivator whose cultivation was above the peak of the Tao void realm entered the area of the chaos tide, it would cause chaos in the chaos tide and all kinds of unpredictable disasters. In Patian and Tua Qianji quickly returned to the tide-watching pavilion, and the area of the chaos tide quickly stabilized. Hu People Jr., if you dare to kill Su Fong, I will definitely kill you. In Patian roared at Hu Lingyi. Hu Po's strange voice came from behind. In Patian, when the chaos tide fights for treasures, it is nothing more than you rob me, and I kill you. This is the rule that has long been established. Hu People's disciple is not only breaking the rule, but also putting me and Hu People in a bad position. Both In Patian and Tua Qianji gnashed their teeth, but there was nothing they could do. They could only watch as Su Fong fell into a life and death situation. At this moment, Hu Lingyi leaped into the air and flew to a place about 300 meters away from the Su Fong. He unleashed a burst of divine might to stabilize his body. Because he was affected by the backflow of the heavenly tide, he could only continue to control the steel ring Xian Bao at this distance. Hu Lingyi was indeed the Tao emptiness realm Tao disciple of the Hu people. His cultivation was only one step away from the Tao saint realm. He was only 1,000 feet away from the whirlpool, but he was still able to talk and laugh freely. He looked at Su Fong and revealed a domineering smile. Su Fong, hand over that supreme Xian Bao and all the time mirages you've comprehended, and I'll spare your life. Su Fong looked at Hu Lingyi with disdain. Looks like you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Hu Lingyi drove the steel ring Xian Bao together with the Su Fong to suddenly sink down. Puff, puff, puff. Su Fong was even closer to the whirlpool below. The divine might released by the steel ring Xian Bao also began to shatter faster. Hu Lingyi coldly shouted, Su Fong, open your Tao palace and soul and accept my seal. Otherwise, you will die without a burial place. Su Fong's eyes revealed a mocking expression. Suddenly, a black Xian Guang flashed from between his eyebrows and transformed into a 1-foot-long black beetle. The beetle opened its mouth and madly gnawed, instantly tearing a hole in the surrounding shackles. It's that damn bug. Su Fong, you really deserve to die. Although the appearance of the heavenly swallowing insect had changed greatly, its aura could not escape Hu Lingyi's senses. He was immediately shocked and angry. He now understood that the insect that had devoured the heavenly stone was Su Fong's doing. Not only Hu Lingyi, but the Hu people, the Yi clan, the Central Profound Divine Race, the Imperial Heaven Divine Realm, and the Hong Heaven Divine Realm were all gnashing their teeth. Who knew how many treasures the heavenly swallowing insect had devoured? How could they not be angry? Just as the heavenly swallowing insect bit a hole in the shackles, the power released by the steel ring Xian Bao also began to crumble. In the blink of an eye, blood vines shot out from Su Fong's body, penetrating the whirlpool's astonishing suction and shackles. They landed several hundred meters away, plunged into the chaotic void, and dragged Su Fong's body outwards. The suction force of the whirlpool was truly astonishing. It caused the blood vines to break apart one by one, and Su Fong's defense formed by his primordial energy was also continuously shattered. The steel ring Xian Bao's shackles completely shattered and flew towards the whirlpool. Whoosh! A blood vine snaked out from Su Fong's palm, wrapped around the steel ring Xian Bao, and then shot towards Hu Lingyi, appearing in front of him in an instant. Hu Lingyi was in a state of complacency, and he couldn't move under the astonishing shackles released by the whirlpool, so he was immediately bound tightly by the blood vine. Then, Su Fong controlled the blood vine and pulled it fiercely, and his body finally broke out of the whirlpool shackles. Hu Lingyi's body flew uncontrollably towards the whirlpool. Even the heaven-piercing Blood King, Vine, won't be able to shackle this seat. Hu Lingyi was shocked and angry at this time. A sword light shot out from his eyes, quickly and fiercely slashing at the blood vine. Hu Lingyi was the Hu people's Dao Void Realm Dao disciple, and he was being nurtured as a future Dao saint. How could he not have a powerful Xianbao? Other than the extremely powerful steel ring, he also had a king-grade profound sword, which was also extremely powerful. Hu Lingyi was confident that this sword was enough to cut through the defense of an ordinary Dao saint expert. No matter how powerful Su Fang's heaven-piercing Blood King Vine was, could it be more powerful than the defense of a Dao saint expert? Moreover, Su Fang's heaven-piercing Blood King Vine was not mature like the mother body, so how could it not be cut in half by a sword? Little did he know, the result was completely out of Hu Lingyi's expectations. When the sword slashed at the heaven-piercing Blood King Vine, it was actually repelled, and the blood vine was actually undamaged. Hu Lingyi's divine light changed instantly. He didn't know that Su Fang's blood vine was different from the other blood vines. It was fused with a thread spat out by a heavenly swallowing insect and Su Fang's primordial energy. In terms of toughness, it was not much inferior to the chaotic god binding chain that shackled holy, sovereign Xieju. Unless it was a power formed from primordial energy, there was no power that could cut through Su Fang's blood vine. In the blink of an eye, Su Fang and Hu Lingyi closed the distance between them. When he crossed paths with Hu Lingyi, Su Fang smiled coldly and punched out. The sound of the heavenly Dao rolled out like a heavenly drum, bombarding Hu Lingyi's body. Hu Lingyi let out a miserable scream, and his body flew into the chaotic vortex like an arrow released from a bow. Su Fang borrowed the force of the rebound and the pulling force of the blood vines to fly thousands of feet away again. He then put away the blood vines and the steel ring Xianbao, and urged the wasp Xianbao to quickly move away from the vortex. Hu Lingyi was trapped in the chaotic vortex, and his defenses were quickly shattered, followed by his physical body. He was also a decisive and ruthless person. He hurriedly released his Dharma body, and his origin soul also resided in the king-grade profound sword. He abandoned his physical body and burned his thoughts in an attempt to break out of the vortex. However, he still underestimated the terror of the chaotic vortex. Not only was his physical body quickly ground into meat paste, but his Dharma body also began to crumble as soon as it appeared. The profound sword that resided in his origin soul struggled for a moment before it was also sucked into the depths of the chaotic vortex and disappeared without a trace. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. Who would have thought? No one would have thought that Su Fang and Hu Lingyi would switch roles in the blink of an eye. Hu Lingyi's futile attempt to kill and steal the treasure failed, and he ended up losing his life. At this time, the vortex began to gradually calm, and the chaotic void also began to return to normal. This meant that the chaotic tide that erupted once an epoch was about to end. There was a moment of silence. Hu let out an earth-shattering roar of anger. Su Fang, you killed Hu people's third realm Dao disciples. My clan will not rest until you are dead. In Patian laughed sarcastically. Hu Pa, when the chaotic tide fights for treasures, it's nothing more than you stealing from me, and I'll kill you. This is a rule that has long been established. You're not only breaking the rules by threatening my Western Mystery Mountain disciple, but you're also putting me and the Western Mystery Mountain in a bad light. He actually repeated Hu Po's previous words to Hu Pa. Tua Qinji laughed loudly. Many Dao saints looked at Hu Pa and shook their heads. Hu Lingyi could be considered to have shot himself in the foot. He actually offended Su Fang for no reason and courted death in the end. Hu people were unlucky to have encountered Su Fang. First, it was the son of the patriarch, Hu Yufei. Then it was the Dao Lord Realm Dao disciple, Hu Ditian. This time, the Dao Profound Realm Dao disciple, Hu Chong, and the Void Realm Dao disciple, Hu Lingyi, had all perished at Su Fang's hands. Hu gnashed his teeth and roared furiously towards the chaotic tide. Hu people's disciples kill Su Fang. The treasures in Su Fang's possession will belong to anyone else who kills him. And we, who people will repay him with a king-grade Xian Bao and 100,000 king-grade medicinal pills. That supreme Xian Bao is in Su Fang's possession, and he has so many temporal mirages. Join forces to kill him and split his treasures. Over 1,000 cultivators charged towards Su Fang successively. There were cultivators from the Hu people and experts from other powers amongst them. They coveted the treasures in Su Fang's possession and the reward Hu Po offered, and they intended to kill Su Fang. If you want to kill me, Su Fang, then you must be prepared to die. Su Fang revealed a resolute and ruthless side. He executed my master seal, and the divine might of supremacy in the heavens and the earth instantly transformed into a world that enveloped the 30-plus cultivators in front of him. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Numerous blood vines shot out from Su Fang's body, and they relied on the divine might of my master seal to swiftly shackle down numerous cultivators. After fusing with Daozu's blood and undergoing another transformation, the Skypiercer Blood King Vine had completely revealed its ability at this moment. The blood threads swiftly seeped into the bodies of those cultivators and swallowed them with a wave of sizzling sounds. After a few breaths of time, all of them had transformed into dried corpses. Hiss, 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 hiss. The cultivators following closely behind all gasped at the same time. Their expressions became hesitant, and their bodies suddenly slowed down. This was the effect that Su Fang wanted. In the face of so many experts, he could only display the most ruthless means to intimidate them. What are you afraid of? No matter how powerful Su Fang is, he's only one person. He's not a Dao saint, but a lower Dao Void Realm cultivator. Feng Zhou from the Imperial Heaven Divine Realm began to fan the flames and took the lead to attack Su Fang. Under Feng Zhou's lead, the other cultivators became restless once again. A great fortune is right in front of us. If we don't fight now, when will we? Chapter 3071. More and more cultivators began to get restless. Ling Xiaozi suddenly hollered angrily. Su Fang is the disciple of Shi Xian Supreme. How can we allow other divine realm cultivators to bully him like this? Yin Patian followed with a thunderous roar. Do you really think there's no one else in Shi Xian? Elders and disciples of the heaven-breaking peak and the other peaks, what are you waiting for? If anyone dares to make a move on junior brother Su Fang, we'll turn the world upside down. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Wine St. Peak's cultivators were the first to attack. Heaven-breaking peaks cultivators followed suit. Not only is Su Fang a disciple of Shi Xian's Daozu, but he's also a disciple of Dongxuan Daozu. How can Dongxuan's cultivators sit by and watch? Exalted Elder Spring Autumn shouted loudly, leading Dongxuan's cultivators towards Su Fang. Grand Elder Changsun of the three sovereign mystical sects also charged out without hesitation. Although I'm not a Shi Xian cultivator or a Dongxuan cultivator, I still owe Su Fang a favor. Now that Su Fang is being attacked, wouldn't I be ungrateful if I stood by and watched? Many cultivators who had benefited from Su Fang's deal with Su Fang also charged out. Those cultivators who had been incited by Hu Po to kill Su Fang immediately dismissed the idea and fled into the distance when they saw the commotion. Only the Hu people, the other 5 divine tribes, and 100 cultivators from Qitian divine realm refused to give up, charging towards Su Fang madly with Feng Zhou and Yi Wuji. Thank you, everyone. Su Fang laughed loudly when he saw this. Looking at Feng Zhou, who was charging towards him, Su Fang's gaze suddenly turned sharp as he shouted domineeringly, I'm not a Dao saint, but killing you is a piece of cake. Arrogant. Feng Zhou sneered disdainfully, and a thought flashed out, instantly condensing into a huge, shining golden talisman. As the golden light flashed, it suddenly appeared in front of Su Fang and was about to shackle Su Fang. Yin Yang Heavenly Wheel, Nature Heavenly Wheel, Nine Suns Heavenly Wheel break. Su Fang unleashed his formless heavenly wheels. 3 wheels of different colors coalesced in an instant and surged towards the talisman. The Yin Yang Heavenly Wheel burst forth with endless Yin Yang divine might, shaking and tearing the runes apart. The heavenly wheel of nature arrived one after another, and the huge talisman was destroyed. It was completely torn apart, collapsing with a loud bang. The Nine Suns' heavenly wheel rolled out and attacked Feng Zhou. The time-sealing divine light changed instantly. He hurriedly put up a defense. Condense a talisman? It transformed into a mountain peak that was hundreds of meters high. Boom! When the Nine Suns' heavenly wheel collapsed, the mountain peak also collapsed with a loud rumble. How can a lower-level Tao Void cultivator be so powerful to such a terrifying extent? Feng Zhou was shaken by the aftershock of the collision and retreated continuously. In an instant, the divine light in his eyes changed. Yi Wuji looked at Su Feng with eyes full of fear. Amidst the monstrous chaotic airflow set off by the collision, Su Feng unleashed the heavenly wheel of massacre, the heavenly wheel of calamity, the heavenly wheel of formation, and the heavenly wheel of poison. They attacked Feng Zhou, Yi Wuji, and the cultivators behind them. Gui Gui was also released by Su Feng. It transformed into a black sea of blood and swept out with a swoosh. Wherever the poisonous blood swept out, even the Tao Void cultivators who were stained with the poisonous blood of Gui Gui were quickly infiltrated by the poisonous blood, and their bodies started to rot. Screams of agony rose and fell one after another. Qi, the heavenly devouring insect, shot out from Su Feng's Tao Palace and disappeared without a trace in a flash. When it reappeared, it was next to the peach wood sword that Yi Wuji was about to activate. It's that damned insect! Yi Wuji was scared out of his wits and hurriedly put away his peach wood sword. He'd personally witnessed the scene of the heavenly devourer beetle devouring the heavenly stone, and it could even devour the heavenly stone that was used to refine King Great treasures. So, how difficult would it be for this beetle to devour his dark treasure? If he didn't put away, the heavenly devouring insect would devour his Xian Bao. That would be a great loss. Su Feng, you are qualified to obtain that supreme Xian Bao. I won't fight with you over it. Yi Wuji was already seriously injured in the previous treasure snatching. Now that he had seen Su Feng's strength, he no longer had any thoughts of snatching the treasure. He shouted at Su Fengda and quickly retreated. The heavenly devouring insect flashed again and appeared next to a Hu People upper stage Tao Void cultivator. That Hu People expert was wearing a silver divine armor. It was actually a royal grade Xian Bao. The heavenly devouring insect was obviously attracted by the aura emitted by the armor on that Hu People expert. It flew up and devoured him. By the time the Hu People expert noticed it, his back was already riddled with holes by the heavenly devouring insect. A royal grade Xian Bao had become a piece of scrap metal. Immediately after, the sea of blood formed by Gui Gui swept over, instantly engulfing the Hu tribe cultivator and devouring him. The heavenly devouring insect devoured the treasure as soon as it saw it, scaring the cultivators so much that they didn't dare to take out the Xian Bao. Seeing Su Feng's shocking strength and the poisonous sea of blood formed by Gui Gui, even Yi Wuji gave up on snatching the treasure. The other cultivators naturally gave up on the idea of snatching the treasure and fled one after another. Boom, boom, boom. Feng Zhou unleashed all of his abilities, shattering the heavenly wheels one after another. He himself was also in a heavily injured state. At this time, Su Feng activated the heaven-piercing Blood King vine. Blood vines filled the sky and intertwined together to cover the sky, enveloping Feng Zhou and a dozen cultivators who couldn't escape in time. Qi, Qi. The blood-red vines danced like venomous pythons, entangling more than a dozen cultivators. In less than 10 breaths, these cultivators were devoured into dried corpses, including 3 Tao Void Realm experts from the Royal Heaven Divine Realm. Feng Zhou was indeed an expert at the peak of the upper level of the Tao Void Realm. Burning his thoughts, he condensed one shocking talisman after another around him. Even a heaven-piercing Blood King vine would have a hard time penetrating through it. However, Feng Zhou had fallen into the encirclement of the blood vines and was unable to break free. He knew that it would be difficult for him to escape this time. So he had no choice but to open his mouth and beg for mercy. Su Fong, I admit defeat. Admit defeat? Su Fong sneered indifferently. This is not a friendly exchange where you can live if you admit defeat. If I were to fall into your hands and admit defeat, would you let me go? When you attacked me, you should have been prepared to be killed by me. Su Fong already had enmity with the royal heaven divine realm cultivators. During the chaos heavenly tide, he had obtained countless treasures, especially the time mirage and the primordial heavenly treasure. If he were to fall into Feng Zhou's hands, not only would his treasures be stolen, but his life would also be in danger. I am a half-step Dao saint, an expert of the human race. Now that the human world is being invaded by a foreign race, Su Fong, how can you kill me, an expert of the human race? Feng Zhou shouted loudly. Su Fong sneered. His massacre avatar flashed out and punched out with the sound of the heavenly Dao, shattering Feng Zhou's defenses layer by layer. Chi! 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 The blood-red vines surged out and drilled into Feng Zhou's body, instantly devouring his life force and energy. By the time Su Fong withdrew his blood-fiend avatar and heaven-piercing Blood King vine, Feng Zhou had already turned into a dried corpse. Su Fong died. Hu Po's voice was filled with murderous intent. Immediately after, a wave of will and divine aura descended and turned into a huge palm print that grabbed at Su Fong. At this moment, the chaos heavenly tide had completely subsided and everything had returned to normal. As a Dao Saint expert, Hupa could attack without any reservations. In his fury, Hupa planned to kill Su Fong directly. Boom, boom, boom. An astonishing pressure swept towards Su Fong. The surrounding chaos void was compressed layer by layer under Hu Po's will and divine aura. The strength of a Dao Saint expert was so strong. Under Hu Po's divine aura, the chaos void was like a piece of paper that he could crush at will. Everything within it would be crushed by him. The current me is no longer the same as when I was in the central, profound divine realm. I am no longer a Dao Saint expert like you, who can crush me. Su Fong revealed a domineering smile. A wave of primordial heavenly wheel surged out of his body and formed a protective divine aura around him. Boom! The primordial heavenly wheel trembled under the immense pressure and quickly shrank. However, it did not shatter. The palm that Hupa formed with his thoughts had exhausted its power in the collision and collapsed with a boom. This scene shocked more than 100,000 cultivators and caused them to cry out in surprise. Only then did they realize that Su Fong's true strength was above that of a void Dao cultivator. He even had the qualifications to fight with a Dao Saint expert. Yi Wuji felt waves of fear in his heart. He thought about how he had wanted to snatch Su Fong's treasures and take back Daozu's blood. If Su Fong really wanted to kill him, how could he still be alive? Before the central profound divine realms Jiuquan Heaven Selection Finals, Su Fong had been a tiny ant in front of a Dao Saint expert like Hupa. He had not been able to resist at all. At this moment, although Su Fong was still unable to compete with a powerful Dao Saint expert like Hupa, he was definitely not a weakling who could be bullied by a Dao Saint expert. I'll make you pay with your life for Feng Zhou. Another Dao Saint expert's thoughts suddenly appeared and turned into a dignified old man's face that looked indifferently at Su Fong. This person was a Dao Saint expert from the Imperial Heaven Divine Realm. How could he sit still when he saw Feng Zhou being killed by Su Fong? My will is like the heavens. I'll take away your fate and life on behalf of the heavens. The Dao Saint expert from the Imperial Heaven Divine Realm spoke in a dignified voice that contained the will of the heavens. It was as if he could decide Su Fong's fate and life with a single word. This was the Imperial Heaven Divine Realm's peerless divine ability, the world-extinguishing heavenly word. This divine ability contained the supreme will of the heavens. Not only could it decide life and death with a single word, but it could also destroy a mystic world with a single word. It was extremely powerful. I, Su Fong, am the master of my own fate. You're just a Dao Saint expert, so you can't decide my fate and life. A domineering aura that said, I don't care about the heavens surged out of Su Fang's body. Soon after, an aura that came from the life shrinking technique surged out of the Tao Palace and turned into an ethereal lightning of fate. The lightning of fate. Boom! The lightning of fate had the power to obliterate fate and collided with the world-extinguishing heavenly word of the Imperial Heaven Divine Realm expert. The silent collision gave off a terrifying feeling that the heavens were about to collapse and the earth was about to shatter. Su Fang was sent flying hundreds of meters away. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His hair quickly turned gray, and he lost a third of his lifespan in an instant. The Tao Saint expert's attack was shattered by the lightning of fate, but the power to obliterate fate did not diminish. It burned the face formed by the Tao Saint expert's thoughts into ashes. Chapter 3072. The fact that the Tao Saint from the Imperial Heaven Divine Realm had been injured by Su Fang caused the expressions of all the Tao Saints on the tide-watching pavilion to change. In just tens of thousands of years, this kid has grown to such an astonishing level. In the future, he will definitely become a supreme expert. Xianzheng looked at Su Fang with a hint of regret in his eyes. The other Tao Saints looked at Su Fang in the chaotic void, and their gazes instantly changed. They no longer looked at Su Fang as a junior like before. Instead, they treated Su Fang as an expert on the same level as them. Hu Pa and the Tao Saints from the Imperial Heaven Divine Realm were about to continue attacking, but they were stopped by Yin Patian and Tua Qianji. Hu Pa shouted, "Su Fang killed our Hu people's Tao disciple. Anyone who dares to stop me will be the mortal enemy of the Hu people. Hu people may be powerful, but they do not have the right to act like a tyrant in my Shixian." A cold and dignified voice rang out from the tide-watching pavilion. Monstrous divine might erupted as the sovereign of the Shixian mountain stepped out from the void. The terrifying pressure of a peak Tao Saint swept toward Hu Pa and the Tao Saints from the Imperial Heaven Divine Realm. Puff! Puff! The two Tao Saints spat out blood at the same time. They staggered and almost fell to the ground. Under the fury of the sovereign of the Shixian mountain, both Hu Pa and the Imperial Heaven Divine Realm experts were shocked and terrified. How could they still dare to attack Su Fang? The sovereign's eyes were filled with dissatisfaction. He swept his gaze over the other Western Xian Tao Saints and said in a majestic voice, "Su Fang is the disciple of the Daozu and my junior brother. You watched as Su Fang was bullied by the experts of other forces and did nothing. Could it be that you dare to look down on the Daozu's master and me?" The Western Xian Mountain Tao Saints all looked ashamed and bowed to the sovereign. The first elder of punishments frowned, and his face turned ashen. He was the head elder of the punishment division, and he was very powerful. However, he had no intention of doing anything when he saw the disciples of the Western Profound Daozu being attacked in the territory of the Western Profound Divine Realm. The sovereign's words seemed like he was scolding the Tao Saints, but in truth he was very unhappy with the head elder of punishment, which made him lose all face. The sovereign's divine light swept across the Tao Saints and ordered them to leave. "The chaos tide has ended. Please leave. I won't send you off." Hu Pa harumphed hatefully. "Su Fang has killed our Hu people's Tao Profound and Tao Void Realm Taoists. I beg the Western Mystery Mountain to give the Hu people an explanation." "Explain?" The sovereign smiled indifferently. He stared at Hu Pa and said, "The chaos tide fights for treasures, creation, and opportunities. It's a life-and-death battle to begin with. When Hu people's disciples used all kinds of methods to deal with the Su Fang, why didn't you say anything? Could it be that our Western Mystery Mountain cultivators can die, but you Hu people cultivators can't? Now you're actually asking the Western Mystery Mountain for an explanation? How laughable." After a pause, the divine light swept over Hu Pa and the Tao Saint from the Imperial Heaven Divine region. The sovereign shouted domineeringly, "Hu people and the Imperial Heaven Divine region don't need to participate in the chaos tide after an epic. The Western Mystery Divine region does not welcome you." Hu Pa could only suppress the anger in his heart. Looking at the few Hu people cultivators left, the killing intent in Hu Po's heart intensified again. The Tao Saint from the Imperial Heaven Divine region was the same. Although the two factions had obtained many treasures during the Chaos Tide, they had lost Hu Lingyi and Feng Zhou, and countless other cultivators had died. Compared to such a loss, those gains were nothing. Hoopa looked at Su Feng and shouted coldly, "Su Feng, from now on, unless you hide in the Western Mystery Mountain forever, otherwise." Humph. And that Supreme Xian Bao, even if you have a life to take it, I'm afraid you won't have the life to use it. Su Feng replied bluntly, "Thank you, Lord Hoopa, for reminding me. One day, I will definitely pay a visit to the Hu people." Hoopa snorted coldly, waved his sleeve, and disappeared into the void. The other Tao Saints also left. Su Feng flew toward the tide-observing pavilion under the escort of many Western mystery cultivators. Looking at Su Feng's figure, everyone was shocked and sighed in their hearts. During the Chaos Tide treasure hunt, every cultivator had gained a lot. No matter how weak a cultivator was, even if they did not obtain any treasures, comprehending the time mirage of the second Chaos Tide would be greatly beneficial to their future cultivation. It could be considered a great opportunity. However, compared to Su Feng's gains, the gains of the other cultivators were not worth mentioning. Without a doubt, Su Feng was the biggest winner of this Chaos Tide. Not to mention the other treasures he had obtained, just the time mirage, a drop of Daozu's blood, and the supreme Xian Bao alone were enough. Not to mention the cultivators below the Tao Void Realm. Even the Tao Saints and Tao Ancestors were tempted and envious of such a bountiful harvest. Who would not be envious and jealous of such gains? However, Su Feng had displayed great strength. Hu Lingyi and Feng Zhou, who were both peak Tao Void Realm experts, had died in Su Feng's hands. Even the Tao Saints of the Imperial Heaven Divine Realm had suffered great losses in Su Feng's hands. Who would dare to have any ideas about him? Many cultivators could only be envious and completely suppress the greed in their hearts. There were also many Tao Void experts who had obtained great benefits from Su Feng. Other than gratitude towards Su Feng, they did not feel any jealousy or hatred. The cultivators of the Western Mystery Mountain stepped into the gate above the tide-observing pavilion in batches, leaving the pavilion and returning to the Western Mystery Divine Realm. "Lord Tuo Qianji, please take your time to return to Dongxian. I have some time mirages here. Please bring them to Dongshuan's master." Su Feng transmitted his divine sense to Tuo Qianji and stepped into the gate. Tuo Qianji, who was high up in the tide-observing pavilion, was surprised and delighted, but he did not show it on his face. Back to the Western Mystery Mountain, there were already elders of the Hall of Punishment waiting in the air, shouting loudly at the returning Western Mystery cultivators. All cultivators who participated in the Chaos Tide treasure hunt, head to the Hall of Punishment directly and present your treasures to the reward. Su Feng sneered disdainfully and teleported to the strange Silence Peak, not caring about the decree of the Hall of Punishment. All the cultivators who had participated in the Chaos Tide treasure hunt had gathered in the Hall of Punishment. Other than those who had died in the treasure hunt, Su Feng was the only one missing. Many cultivators handed over the treasures they had obtained in the Chaos Tide. The Hall of Punishment had its own way of checking if anyone had secretly hidden any treasures, so no one dared to hide anything. At the same time, many cultivators also condensed the time mirages they had comprehended into jade scrolls and handed them to the Hall of Punishment, which were converted into points according to their level. Then, the rewards were distributed according to the points. According to the points, each peak and training hall would receive different rewards, and the resources distributed in the next epoch would be different as well. The treasures and mirage jade scrolls Chun Tianqing's heaven-chasing peak had submitted were quite extraordinary as well, ranking in the top 20. Naturally, the rewards and resources distributed were astounding as well. In spite of this, Chun Tianqing was not excited at all. Su Feng had completely crushed his confidence in the Chaos Tide treasure hunt, and he could not recover from this setback. After the rewards were distributed, the first Elder of Punishment appeared. His divine light swept across the cultivators. He stroked his beard and nodded, saying, Very good. The Western Mystic Divine Realm has gained much more from this chaos-tide treasure hunt than before. The overall strength of the Western Mystic Mountain will definitely increase greatly. Because of this, then the first Elder of Punishment sighed and said, "It's a pity that someone took the treasures for himself for his own selfish reasons." He even refused to hand over the time mirages to the sect. Otherwise, everyone here could have comprehended the mirages, and with the help of those mirages, your cultivation would have improved greatly. However, someone supported him, which made him so arrogant and overbearing that he did not even take the Hall of Punishment seriously. Alas, who else could the person that the great Elder of Punishment mentioned be other than Su Fong? He was obviously trying to incite the cultivators' anger and drown Su Fong in their jealousy and hatred. As expected, many cultivators were enraged by the first Elder of Punishment's words. Su Fong had obtained so many treasures, fortunes, and even a supreme Xian Bao, which was already enviable. How could they not be angry when he took all the treasures for himself? However, there were also many cultivators who had obtained great benefits from Su Fong. At this moment, they saw through the first Elder of Punishment's intentions. A dignified first elder was actually using such a despicable method to incite public anger against Su Fong. All of them were silent. Ling Xiao Zi and the other cultivators of the Wine Saint Peak and Heavenbreaker Peak sneered without end in their hearts. If it wasn't for the Punishment Hall bullying Su Fong that day and not even being willing to give him a command token, how could they have infuriated him? Now, the Punishment Hall isn't even able to obtain a single benefit from him. What had happened in the chaos tide quickly spread to every dojo in the Western Mystic Mountain. Many cultivators were shocked by Su Fong's strength. At this moment, in the eyes of the Western Mystic Mountain cultivators, Su Fong was already above the peak masters of the various peaks and was close to becoming a Dao Saint expert. However, under the deliberate instigation of the Hall of Punishment, many cultivators were also full of resentment towards Su Fong. However, Su Fong's strength was there for all to see. He had made a name for himself in the chaos tide and was clearly protected by the sovereign. Who dared to provoke him? 3 days later, Su Fong suddenly flew out of the strange Silence Peak and arrived at the main palace at the top of the main peak. Please tell Senior Brother Sovereign that Su Fong is here to see him. Su Fong cupped his fist towards the cultivator guarding the door. Elder Su Fong, please wait. The cultivator guarding the door completely changed his attitude and hurriedly cupped his fists towards Su Fong to return the greeting before entering the palace to report to the sovereign. Soon, the sovereign's majestic voice came from the depths of the palace. Junior Brother Su Fong, there is no need to be so courteous. Just come in directly. Why do you need to report anything? Su Fong smiled in his heart. The last time he came here, his attitude was not like this. Passing through the layers of formations and entering the depths of the palace, Su Fong saw the young sovereign. Then he gave the jade scroll with the 3 Daozu time mirages to the sovereign. The sovereign took it and looked. His eyes immediately became bright, and his face showed a bright smile. Junior Brother Su Fong, you have done a great service for She Mystic this time. With these 3 time mirages, this sovereign even has a chance of reaching the Daozu. This sovereign thanks you. Senior Brother Sovereign is too courteous. This is what I should do, Su Fong said very politely. Then the sovereign suddenly asked, you really obtained that sovereign Xian Bao? Su Fong's heart jumped. Chapter 3073. Su Fong hurriedly explained, that's right, that bronze treasure is indeed in my hands. It's just that it's clearly damaged and doesn't seem to have any use. Without waiting for him to finish, the sovereign waved his hand and said, the treasure you obtained belongs to you. This sovereign won't ask about it and won't steal it from you. Su Fong let out a sigh of relief. The sovereign continued, next, this sovereign will announce that you have given the supreme Xian Bao to this sovereign. Su Fong immediately understood the sovereign's intentions and hurriedly cupped his fists in thanks. The sovereign was clearly relieving the pressure on Su Fong to prevent many experts from coveting that treasure. Su Fong, you obtained so much and such a shocking fortune this time. It will definitely cause countless people to be jealous. Also, you have shocking talent. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Although you are Daozu's disciple, you still have to be careful in the Western Black Mountain. Senior Brother Sovereign is talking about the punishment hall, right? Thank you for the reminder. Su Fong knows what to do. But you don't have to worry about anything. This sovereign will give one of the 3 mirages you gave to this sovereign. He will naturally support you. With this sovereign and him, as long as you don't really want to betray the Western Black Mountain, no one can do anything to you. Thank you, Senior Brother Sovereign. There's one more thing. Master's original body has returned from the southern, profound divine realm. He has left the Western Black Mountain and entered the depths of the primal chaos. He is preparing to enter seclusion and attempt that legendary step that the human race has never taken before. That legendary step. Master will definitely succeed this time. Su Fong already knew about this. The cause was the mirage of the foreign race Daozu's last words that Su Fong had obtained. Thinking of the legendary supreme peak that surpassed Daozu, Su Fong couldn't help but feel a surge of yearning. The sovereign sighed. Master is going all in. The human race is in danger now. Master is not only doing this for himself, but also for the human race. It seemed that the human world would not be able to escape this calamity. Shixian Daozu's path to a higher realm would not be smooth. Su Fong's mood suddenly became a lot heavier, and his good mood was immediately diluted. After another round of conversation, Su Fong stood up and said goodbye. The sovereign suddenly said, "What this sovereign told you about Lung Qingyue was not a joke. In a few days, this sovereign will let her go to the strange silence peak." Senior Brother Sovereign, let's forget about this matter. Lung Qingyue is such a proud daughter of heaven. Junior Brother can't afford to serve her. Su Fong's body trembled, and he quickly left the depths of the palace. The sovereign's laughter came from behind him. Returning to Strange Silence Peak from the main peak, Tuo Qinji was already waiting in the dojo with Supreme Holiness Spring and Autumn, Dongxian Wuhan, and the others. Su Fong gave Tuo Qinji a copy of the 3 foreign race Daozu's height mirages to take back to the Eastern Xian divine realm. Tuo Qinji and the others were naturally overjoyed. They left a large amount of resources for Su Fong and then left. After sending off the experts of the Eastern Xian divine realm, Su Fong went straight to a mountain around Strange Silence Peak. A middle-aged cultivator flew out of the dojo. It was the master of that mountain and also an expert of the middle realm of Dao Void Realm. The middle-aged cultivator frowned and said coldly to Su Fong, "Master of Strange Silence Peak, you have wantonly plundered this seat's spirit chi. What do you want to do now that you have suddenly come?" In these years, Su Fong used the spirit-capturing formation to wantonly devour the surrounding spirit chi and world presence. It affected the surrounding mountains and greatly affected these mountains. Now that Su Fong suddenly came to visit, how could the middle-aged cultivator not be angry and vigilant? Su Fong is deeply ashamed to have disturbed you all these years. Take these as an apology. Please kindly accept them. Su Fong smiled apologetically. He waved his hand and rolled out a dozen jade slips, which flew to the middle-aged cultivator. Grabbing the jade slips and sensing them, the middle-aged cultivator's face revealed an expression of wild joy. He said in disbelief, "These are the mirages of a foreign race, Dao, Saint Expert. You are really giving them to the seat? You and I are from the same sect. These are just some mirages. It's nothing." Su Fong smiled embarrassedly, then turned and flew away. The middle-aged cultivator's face was full of smiles. There was no longer a trace of resentment towards Su Fong. He happily returned to the dojo. After that, Su Fong went to almost all of the 1,080 mountains of the Western Xian Mountain. Every time he visited a dojo on a mountain, Su Fong would give some mirages. They were all mirages that the experts of the dojo could use. For them, they were priceless treasures. As to Wine Saint Peak and Heaven Breaking Peak, other than the 3 mirages of the foreign race Daozu, Su Fong gave them almost all of the time mirages. The cultivators of the 2 mountains were all excited. In Potion's smug and joyful laughter almost spread through all of Shixian. Only heaven-chasing peak and punishment hall did Su Fong not give a single blade of grass. This caused the cultivators of heaven-chasing peak and the many elders and cultivators of punishment hall to be furious. While they could obtain mirages from other dojos through other channels, but they would have to pay a great price. To say nothing of the price, the most important thing was that they had lost face. This time, it was like they had been slapped in the face by Su Fong and in front of all the cultivators of the Western Xian Mountain. The elders and cultivators of Punishment Hall did not dare to talk about Chief Elder, but the cultivators of Heaven-Chasing Peak were very critical of Chen Tianqing. If he had not offended Su Fong, why would he be treated so differently? Soon, many experts left the Heaven-Chasing Peak and joined other dojos. Chen Tianqing received another heavy blow. He announced that he would enter long-term seclusion and disappeared from everyone's sight. The cultivators of the dojos that had received benefits from Su Fong all praised Su Fong. Su Fong was praised by countless people. When someone mentioned Su Fong, praises such as great strength, peerless talent, and benevolence would be heard. Not long after, news came from the main peak that the supreme Xian Bao that Su Fong had risked his life to obtain in the Chaos Tide had been given to the sovereign. Supposedly, the sovereign had given it directly to the Shi Xian Daozu. However, it was said that the treasure was a damaged treasure and did not have much use. The experts who had been thinking about the supreme Xian Bao immediately dismissed the idea. This incident raised Su Fong's reputation to new heights. For a time, no one in the Xixian Mountain could match Su Fong's reputation, and he was revered by tens of thousands of people. First Elder of Punishment Hall had wanted to use the time mirage to provoke public anger, but he had not expected Su Fong to resolve it so easily. Moreover, after being slapped in the face by Su Fong, the elders and cultivators of Punishment Hall all lowered their heads and were too ashamed to face anyone when they went out. However, the most depressed person was not the people of Punishment Hall, Chen Tianqing, or the cultivators of Heaven-Chasing Peak, but true Lord Myriad Thunder. His Thunder Roar Peak was one of the top 10 dojos in the Xixian Mountain. Su Fong had visited the master of Thunder Roar Peak and given him many mirages. The cultivators of Thunder Roar Peak were naturally overjoyed. True Lord Myriad Thunder had thought that he could also benefit from this. Who would have thought? The Peak Master summoned true Lord Myriad Thunder alone and told him that he was not allowed to study the mirage that Thunder Roar Peak had obtained from Su Fong. Then, the Peak Master reprimanded true Lord Myriad Thunder harshly and told him to return to his residence to reflect on his mistakes. Obviously, he was afraid that he would provoke Su Fong again. Never would I have thought that Su Fong would rise to such heights in the Xixian Mountain. How will I have a foothold in the Xixian Mountain in the future? I might not even be able to protect my life. True Lord Myriad Thunder returned to his residence, thinking that Su Fong was constantly on his mind and was in a constant state of anxiety. After sending out the time mirage, Su Fong returned to Strange Silence Peak and prepared to cultivate in seclusion. Who would have thought that not long after he returned, another uninvited guest had come to Strange Silence Peak? It was the arrogant woman, Lung Qingwei. Who would have thought that she had actually been sent by the sovereign? The sovereign's intention was actually very simple. Su Fong's lecherous reputation had long spread throughout Dongxian. How could the sovereign not know? Su Fong had displayed great strength and endless potential. The sovereign was planning to use Lung Qingyue, his descendant, to get closer to Su Fong. Even if Lung Qingyue was beautiful, Su Fong wouldn't take her beauty to heart and directly avoided her. Su Fong entered the formation of time inside Fu Yao's residence and began to cultivate and recover. He had lost a lot of life force when he used the Tianji life shrinking art. He had to recover his life force first before increasing his strength. The news he learned from the sovereign gave Su Fong a huge sense of urgency. The human race was about to face a catastrophe of destruction, and his strength was far from enough. Just as Su Fong was cultivating in seclusion, a figure appeared in front of the Hall of Punishment. It was a young man with a rather strange green face and green hair. This person's strength and identity were shocking. He was a Tao saint of Sichuan Mountain and the master of Ningxue Peak. After entering the Hall of Punishment, Ningxue Peak Master came to the depths of the hall and entered an independent space, arriving at a paradise. In the depths of the forest shrouded in clouds, the first elder of punishment's majestic voice came. Peak Master Ningxue, you have always been alone and don't interact with others. Why have you suddenly come to this seat? Ningxue Peak Master slowly flew to a residence in the depths of the forest. The first elder of punishment was waiting for her in a peach forest. I heard that first elder was angered by a kid a few days ago. This seat has come to visit first elder. Ningxue Peak Master sat cross-legged opposite the first elder of punishment and said with a smile, "This seat is a half-step Daozu. How can I be angered by such a small matter and ruin my state of mind?" The first elder of punishment stroked his beard and smiled embarrassedly. The master of Ningxue Peak said, "If the head elder of punishment knows that the experts of the human race have been defeated in the southern profound divine region, and that it won't be long before the entire human world is invaded by foreign races, will it shake the head elder's Tao heart?" The first elder of punishment's expression changed in an instant. Then he sighed dejectedly. That is the fate of the human race. This seat can only resign to fate. Ningxue Peak Master suddenly changed to a sound transmission. According to this seat's knowledge, Xianzheng's master has found a paradise in the depths of the chaos. Xianzheng is contacting the 5 great god races of the middle profound realm and other divine realms to select experts and geniuses of the human race, to leave the Jiushuan divine realm and head to that world. The first elder of punishment revealed an incredulous expression. How come this seat has never heard of such a big matter? Ningxue Peak Master snorted. If this matter is known by outsiders, won't the hearts of the human race scatter? Who will have the heart to resist the other races? At that time, no one will be able to escape. Also, not everyone is qualified to go to that holy land. The first elder of punishment's eyes flashed as he stared at Ningxue Peak Master. How do you know? First elder will naturally know this in the future. If first elder does not want to return to the earth in the calamity of the other races, you can only go to that holy land. You won't just be able to protect yourself. You might even have a chance of becoming a peerless Daozu. So you have been secretly disloyal to Shi Xian for a long time. You have found this seat. You clearly have a plan. Otherwise, you would not have given this seat such a chance. Speak, what are your conditions? First elder is a wise and decisive person. Chapter 3074. Su Feng was in the strange Silence Peak cave abode. With the help of some Tao ancestor's blood, he quickly recovered his life force to its peak state. Then, he flew out of the Fuyao cave and started to cultivate in the depths of the formation. He was trying to break through to the peak of the upper Tao void realm. Time flew by. Just as Su Feng was immersed in his cultivation, the situation in the outside world had changed drastically. After 100,000 years of confrontation between the human race and the foreign race, the human race was starting to feel uneasy. At this time, the foreign race suddenly sent more top experts to attack the human cultivator army. A terrible war broke out in the southern profound divine realm. The Daozu experts on both sides even participated in the war and started to fight fiercely. The war lasted for thousands of years, and the southern profound divine realm was almost completely destroyed. More than half of the profound world was turned into a wasteland, and less than 10% of the human and monster cultivators survived. In the end, the human and monster cultivators were completely defeated. Even a southern profound Daozu and a monster cultivator who was as strong as Daozu died in the war. The death of the Daozu experts shocked the human and monster cultivators. They lost all will to fight and withdrew from the southern profound divine realm. From then on, the human world lost the divine realm. Moreover, the foreign race tore a corner of the human world, and the destruction of the human race was getting closer and closer. The western profound divine realm also fell into chaos. Not only did the evil path and bandits start to rise, but the foreign race also started to infiltrate. The evil gods that were extinguished together with the foreign race rose from the ashes in the western profound divine realm. The western profound mountain had no choice but to send experts to suppress them. Although there was no major chaos for the time being, everyone was anxious. About 30,000 years. Su Fong, who was sitting cross-legged in the strange silence peak, suddenly released layers of tribulation energy from his body. The moment the tribulation energy came out of his body, it immediately turned into burning tribulation fire. It burned madly and instantly turned into a flame that covered an area of almost 300 meters. Crack, crack, crack. The impact started to spread throughout Su Fong's body, and the impurities in his placenta surged out layer by layer. A cultivator's advancement was undoubtedly an extremely painful thing, but Su Fong had long been familiar with it. All he could do was wait in pain. Su Fong waited until the ascension energy in his body calmed down and he was able to control it. Then, he started to consume king-grade medicinal pills, using the medicinal energy to help him ascend. When the promotion power completely calmed down and the tribulation fire was extinguished, Su Fong's promotion ended. He took a closer look. Inside his body, Tao Palace and Dharmakaya, there were 4 deep and complicated heavenly marks everywhere. This meant that Su Fong had already surpassed the lower realm of Tao Void and stepped into the middle realm of Tao Void. His life force became even stronger, and a majestic life force surged within his body. The avatars also became more profound, and their Tao palaces became even more vast. The amount of nebulous primordial chaos within the Tao Palace had also increased significantly. Coupled with the silk that the heavenly devourer beetle had spat out, the nebulous primordial chaos was now nearly 10 feet in size. Feeling the changes in his body, Su Fong smiled and relaxed. The middle stage of the Tao Void realm. When he was in the lower realm of Tao Void, Su Fong already had the qualifications to crush Tao Void experts and fight with Tao Saints. Now that he had advanced to the middle realm of Tao Void, it meant that his strength had increased by several times. If he encountered an ordinary Tao Saint expert, not only would he have the power to fight, he could even win. Back inside Fuyao Cavern, Su Fong entered the time formation and began to consume king-grade medicinal pills to make up for the emptiness caused by his promotion. With his cultivation in the middle realm of Tao Void, it would take a long time for him to refine the medicinal energy of a king-grade medicinal pill. However, his cultivation, Tao Palace, and physical body were incomparably strong. Coupled with the devouring ability of the heaven-piercing Blood King Vine, the medicinal energy of a king-grade medicinal pill was quickly refined by him. Su Fong did not have many king-grade medicinal pills on him, but he was not stingy with them. Only by turning resources into his own strength could he make full use of the resources. The catastrophe of the human race was coming, and no one would be spared. The most urgent thing for him now was to improve his strength. After advancing to the middle realm of Tao Void, Su Fong began to merge with the Ice Heart Flower. His Tao Heart had merged with a large amount of Icebone Jade Essence. Now that he had advanced to the middle realm of Tao Void, he could merge with the Ice Heart Flower. He hoped that he could cultivate the legendary Immortal Tao Heart soon. However, the legendary Immortal Tao Heart was not something that could be cultivated so easily. He needed to let the 7 colors Vajra, Tao Heart, slowly absorb the Ice Heart Flower's cold aura. It would take at least tens of thousands of years, or at most hundreds of thousands of years, before he could completely merge with the Ice Heart Flower. Moreover, he might not be able to cultivate the Immortal Tao Heart, but there was a slight possibility. Seeing the Ice Heart Flower, Su Fong immediately thought of Xuanxin in the Ice Soul Holy Clan. Then he thought of Xu Wanjin, Luo Yu, and the others. Although Su Fong knew very well that each of them had their own destiny, he could not help but worry for them. He swallowed 2 king-grade medicinal pills. The emptiness in Su Fong's body had recovered by quite a bit, but he was still far from reaching the middle realm of Tao Void. Just as he continued to swallow medicinal pills and strive to reach the middle realm of Tao Void as soon as possible, Su Fong suddenly raised his eyebrows. A thought flew out of Fu Yao's cave and turned into Su Fong's illusory figure, grabbing a rune talisman. Immediately, Yin Potion's voice came from the rune talisman. Junior brother, senior brother, Jiu Zhongxing has returned from the southern profound divine domain's battlefield. He is heavily injured. Quickly come to Wine Saint Peak. Su Fong was shocked. His main body came out of Fu Yao's cave and withdrew that thought. Then he left Strange Silence Peak and went straight to Wine Saint Peak. When he arrived at Wine Saint Peak, Su Fong learned that the southern profound divine domain had been invaded by foreign races. Jiu Zhongxing was heavily injured in the battle and luckily escaped. He hid in the primal chaos of the domain and recovered a little. Only then did he rush back to the western profound mountain. I wonder if Sima Xiao managed to escape from the battle. Su Fong thought of Sima Xiao, and his heart sank. Although he did not have a deep friendship with Sima Xiao was still a peerless genius that he was acquainted with. Now that the southern profound divine domain had been destroyed and Sima Xiao's fate was unknown, Su Fong's heart was naturally heavy. Jiu Zhongxing was heavily injured and his aura was weak. Without tens of millions of years of secluded cultivation, it would be difficult for him to recover to his previous state. Su Fong separated half of the remaining drop of Daozu's blood and gave it to Jiu Zhongxing. With this half drop of Daozu's blood, even if Jiu Zhongxing could not recover quickly, it would at least shorten the recovery time by dozens of times. Jiu Zhongxing was shocked when he learned about the origin of this drop of Daozu's blood. Then he was filled with gratitude towards Su Fong. Such a precious treasure could be used to save one's life at a critical moment. Let alone senior brothers and junior brothers, even parents and relatives, ordinary cultivators would not give it to others. Su Fong's generosity made Yin Patian and the cultivators of Jiu Zhongxing Mountain admire him greatly. Their relationship with Su Fong became much closer. After leaving Jiu Zhongxing Mountain, on the way, Yin Patian sent a message to Su Fong. Junior brother, the Punishment Hall has just issued a decree that every mountain master of the Western Profound Mountain must complete a sect mission within 50,000 years. Do you know about this? Wasn't there a decree like this in the past? It's different this time. Even your senior brother has to complete the mission this time. Otherwise, you will be severely punished. Moreover, every mission is not simple. I see. You have to be careful. The Punishment Hall will definitely target you when they assign the missions. Don't worry. The missions in the Western Profound Divine Realm cannot do anything to me. Yin Potion's divine light swept over Su Fong. Only then did he realize that Su Fong's aura had reached the middle stage of the Dao Void Realm. He was shocked and stunned. Junior brother, you've advanced again so quickly? Su Fong smiled. I was just lucky. Yin Patian sighed again and again. Extraordinary, truly extraordinary. When you were fighting for the treasure in the primal chaos tide, you were able to injure a Dao Saint as a lower stage Dao Void Realm cultivator. Now that you've advanced a level, even your senior brother will find it difficult to defeat you. Let alone Western Profound. There are very few experts in the entire human world who can do anything to you. After separating from Yin Patian, Su Fong returned to Strange Silence Peak. The sense of urgency in his heart grew stronger. First, he gathered his subordinates in the main hall of Strange Silence Peak and informed them of the situation in the Jiushuan Divine Realm and the Western Profound Divine Realm. When they heard that the Southern Profound Divine Realm had been invaded by foreign races, everyone's expression became extremely serious. No one would be spared if their nest was overturned. How could they not be worried and panicked? Su Fong took out all kinds of resources, treasures, and time mirages of different heights for his subordinates to cultivate. Under such circumstances, everyone felt enormous pressure and began to do their best to increase their strength. By following Su Fong, they had Xianbao that other cultivators did not have. Their cultivation resources were also unattainable. If they did not cultivate diligently, not only would they be letting Su Fong down, they would also be letting themselves down. After making arrangements for the cultivators under his command, Su Fong continued to immerse himself in cultivation, driven by a strong sense of urgency. As for the mission from the punishment hall, he was too lazy to pay attention to it for now. Su Fong entered the cave residence. His main body sat cross-legged in the formation and began to cultivate the Jiuxuan's limitless scripture. While he was comprehending the time mirage, the Jiuxuan's limitless scripture broke through to the 6th level. He still needed to comprehend it further. At the same time, he cultivated other techniques and abhijnas. As his level increased, he gained different insights into the heavenly secret life shrinking technique, the mysterious solution of heavens, the extreme Tao Black Yang technique, the My Lord's 10 Direction seal, the formless heavenly wheels, and other techniques and abhijnas. He also needed to cultivate further to increase his strength. Then, Su Fong released his purple fate spell body and took out a steel ring Xian Bao from the Tao Palace. This treasure was Wu Lingyi's royal grade Xian Bao. It was called the Rui Heavenly Astral Wheel. This treasure could imprison powerful enemies and teleport them as he wished. It was powerful and strange. Now that Hu Lingyi was dead, the treasure naturally became an ownerless item. Su Fong planned to fuse with it. When the time came, he would have another powerful technique. First, he released a purple gas that enveloped the Xian Bao and suppressed the treasure's original soul. Then, Su Fong released a burst of primordial energy. At the same time, he separated a strand of his consciousness and blood, which seeped into the steel ring. At first, the Rui Heavenly Astral Wheel was very resistant. Under the suppression of the purple fate spell body, the original soul had no choice but to submit. Su Fong's energy, blood, and consciousness easily entered. Then, it was time to fuse with the Xian Bao and master the formation. With the cooperation of the original soul, fusing with this royal-grade Xian Bao was not too difficult. After absorbing the Rui Heavenly Astral Wheel into the Tao Palace and continuing to fuse with it, Su Fong began to deal with the other Xian Bao with all his might. Chapter 3075. The Longevity Lamp. Su Fong had learned the name of this primordial heavenly treasure from a sovereign. Although the name was a little tacky, it revealed a kind of transcendence and a kind of supreme dominance. The human race of the Jiuxuan realm of the gods and the countless alien races in the chaos had countless experts. Who dare to say that they could live forever? Even if it was a Daozu expert or a supreme existence who had surpassed the Daozu and grasped the true essence of the great Tao of cultivation, they could at most live a little longer than ordinary cultivators, but it was definitely not true immortality. This lamp was called the Longevity Lamp. A primordial heavenly treasure was a supreme treasure born from the origin of chaos. Even a Daozu expert might not necessarily have such a treasure. Moreover, this treasure was called the Longevity Lamp, which showed how extraordinary it was. It was also thanks to the sovereign's announcement that Su Fong had offered the Longevity Lamp to the outside world. In addition, when the Longevity Lamp erupted from the chaos tide, everyone saw this treasure and knew that it was not complete. Otherwise, who knew how many people would scramble for it and what kind of trouble it would bring to Su Fong? It's not easy to fuse with this treasure. Su Fong was very cautious. He also knew that although he had the purple fate Dharma body and the purple chi Dharma spirit, fusing with the primordial heavenly treasure was not an easy task. First, he used his primordial spirit Dharma body to create layers of array formations in the cave abode. Then, he used the primordial chi as energy to condense another barrier. Even so, Su Fong was still not at ease. He activated the heaven-piercing Blood King vines, which intertwined around him to form a strong layer of defense. Then, he released the heavenly devouring insects. If it didn't work, he could only let the heavenly devouring insects devour the primordial heavenly treasure and not give it a chance to escape. After making all these thorough preparations, Su Fong took out the bronze treasure he had obtained from the chaos tide. The purple fate Dharma body released a purple chi that enveloped the bronze treasure. The treasure did not move at all, which made Su Fong feel relieved. Only then did he carefully size it up. This treasure looked like it was made of bronze, but it gave off an ancient and vicissitude aura. It was densely covered in countless heavenly marks and divine markings. All of them were formed naturally, and they were slightly similar to the Jioshuan's infinite scripture. They were unfamiliar and mysterious, and they contained boundless profundities of the heaven Tao. Su Fang took a few more glances at the heavenly marks and godly runes, which made him feel dizzy. His origin soul was about to be sucked in. The divine beast that made up the treasure looked a little like a divine dragon, while the other divine bird was very similar to a divine phoenix. It was very lifelike, as if it was a living creature that had been sealed. Every scale of the divine beast and every feather of the divine bird contained endless profound meanings and auras. Su Fang took out the destiny binding sky lantern. Buzz, buzz, the two treasures simultaneously emitted a shocking tremor, causing Su Fang's soul to tremble, and he actually lost consciousness in an instant. Then, the two treasures suddenly merged into one, transforming into a bronze oil lamp that was held up by a divine beast and a divine bird. It was flawless, natural, and flawless. Bang! The oil lamp shattered the surrounding purple gas and shot through the air. Fortunately, Su Fang had already shackled the surrounding space. The longevity lamp crashed into the shackles of the heaven-piercing blood king vines, revealing itself. Bang, bang, bang. The longevity lamp crashed into the heaven-piercing blood king vines a few times, creating a hole. Then, it crashed into the enchantment formed by the primordial qi. The enchantment shook violently, but it did not break. It knocked the longevity lamp back. At this time, Su Fang had also come to his senses. He could not help but be shocked and angry. He quickly activated his purple fate avatar and released purple clouds to envelop the longevity lamp again. At the same time, the purple Qi Dharma spirit in the Heaven's Path avatar also released its prowess to control the Xianbao. Only then did the longevity lamp be shackled again. Su Fang wiped the sweat off his forehead, feeling relieved and scared at the same time. If he had not prepared in advance, the longevity lamp would have escaped. Then, it would have been too late for regrets. Next, Su Fang condensed a thought and sent it into the longevity lamp's inner space. After Su Fang had obtained the destiny binding sky lamp from God Lord Jin Xian, he had tried to fuse it together, but he had been unable to enter its inner space. Now, Su Fang understood. It was because the longevity lamp was incomplete and the primordial spirit had sealed itself. His consciousness was naturally unable to enter its inner space. BZZT. The purple clouds urged the longevity lamp to release the azure Xianguang, which absorbed the purple clouds. Su Fang's thought followed the purple clouds into a vast space. This space was incomparably vast, with layers of mysterious divine characters floating everywhere. A mysterious and empty aura of primal chaos drifted through this space, giving Su Fang the feeling that he had entered an eternal world. Qi, a ball of fiery light, abruptly flashed out from the depths of this space. An astonishing aura swept out, blocking the purple clouds and Su Fang's thought. This was a flickering lantern flame, exuding a cold, mysterious, and eternal aura. Moreover, Su Fang could sense that this lantern flame still had its own consciousness. Clearly, this was the primordial spirit of the longevity lamp. Su Fang's thought looked at the lantern flame and said, "You are the longevity lamp's primordial spirit? I am Su Fang of the human race. You are in my hands right now, so you and I are destined to be connected by fate. You will be my treasure. I hope that you will cooperate with me on your own initiative to fuse with the longevity lamp." You? The lantern flame flickered rapidly, transforming into the figure of a woman. She did not look very old, and her figure was hazy and extremely mysterious. Puny low-level life form. You think you can become my master? I was born from the primal chaos origin. What right does a puny life form like you have to become my master? The longevity lamp's primordial spirit spoke in an icy voice, her tone filled with disdain. She was looking down on Su Fang. If not for me, you would still be incomplete. It was I who made you complete. Why can't I be your master? Although I am weak now, I will definitely be a top powerhouse of the human race in the future. Why can't I be your master? Although you've made me complete, you're still far from qualified to be my master. Any random slave of my previous master was 10 times or even 100 times stronger than you. Tell me, what right do you have to control me? Your previous master? I didn't expect you to have a previous master. Even so, he died long ago. Otherwise, you would not have been divided into 2 parts and become incomplete. Since you are in my hands, you must submit to me. If you don't blame me for using tough means. Speaking of this, Su Fong had a strange feeling. He was like a gangster who forced women. If they did not submit, he would use tough means. Even a cultivator as powerful as Dao Zhu could not make me submit with tough means, let alone a puny human like you. Leave my space. The longevity lamp's primordial spirit roared domineeringly. The lamp's flame suddenly lit up like an exploding flower. It exploded with the power of the heavenly Tao, shattering Su Fong's consciousness and purple qi. Su Fong was seething with anger. He had obtained a primordial heavenly treasure with great difficulty. Not only was he unable to make it submit, but his consciousness had been erased. He felt as if he was a bachelor who had saved up half his life and spent money to buy a beautiful wife. When he went to consummate his marriage with her, not only did his wife refuse, she even kicked the bachelor out of the room. If this could be tolerated, what else could be tolerated? Su Fong gnashed his teeth. It seemed that he could only use tough means to force the longevity lamp to submit. The purple fate dharma body and the purple qi primordial spirit displayed their power at the same time. Su Fong's consciousness once again penetrated the longevity lamp's space along with a rolling purple qi. I didn't expect a puny human cultivator like you to have some tricks up your sleeve. Your power makes me feel a little threatened. Unfortunately, it's still too weak. If it were a Xian Bao refined by you humans, I would have no choice but to submit. However, I am a heavenly treasure that exists with the heavenly Tao. How can you suppress me? The longevity lamp sneered disdainfully. It exploded with a shocking flame that collided with a rolling purple qi. Within the flame, there was an eternal and indestructible heavenly Tao aura. It also contained a shocking power that could incinerate all consciousness. The eternal and indestructible aura incinerated Su Fong's purple qi layer by layer, turning it into nothingness. Even the consciousness in Su Fong's consciousness was burned into nothingness. Su Fong lost another consciousness. His face turned pale for a moment, then returned to normal. He did not expect that the purple fate dharma body and the purple qi primordial spirit, which could control all Xian Bao, could not do anything to the longevity lamp's primordial spirit. I'll let you see my true power. Su Fong gritted his teeth. He urged the heavenly devourer insect to pounce on the longevity lamp. Kacha! Kacha! The heavenly devourer insect lay on the longevity lamp and began to gnaw at it. However, it was not that easy to devour the longevity lamp. After half an hour, the heavenly devourer insect had only left a few shallow teeth marks on the longevity lamp. This primordial heavenly treasure was extraordinary. Even the heavenly devourer insect could not devour it. However, given enough time, the heavenly devourer insect would devour it sooner or later. Su Fong sensed the heavenly devourer insect's consciousness and found that it was extremely excited. It seemed that the more difficult something was to devour, the more excited it would be. This was not surprising. The primordial heavenly treasure was a treasure born from the origin of chaos. The heavenly devourer insect had the ability to devour all matter and energy and turn it into primordial qi. It was natural that it would be very interested in the longevity lamp. Heavenly devourer insect? I didn't expect a puny human like you to have such a strange insect. Stop! Stop! The longevity lamp's primordial spirit began to panic. It transmitted its thoughts from the inner space. Su Fong made the heavenly devourer insect stop devouring the longevity lamp. Then, he transmitted his thoughts to the longevity lamp's primordial spirit. Now you should know how powerful I am, right? If you don't want to be devoured by my heavenly devourer insect, You'd better submit obediently. Oof. I'd rather die than submit. Either you let me go and let me return to the chaos, or you let the heavenly devourer insect devour me. I will never devour you. However, the longevity lamp's primordial spirit was still extremely stubborn. It had no intention of submitting at all. Chapter 3076. Unexpectedly, the longevity lamp would rather die than submit. Su Fong furrowed his brows. How could he bear to destroy the primordial heavenly treasure until the very last moment? That was a primordial heavenly treasure. If it was eaten by the heavenly swallowing beetles, it would at most produce some primordial chi. How could Su Fong bear to do that? The longevity lamp original spirit had obviously seen through Su Fong's intention, so it was not afraid at all. There's no other way. It seems that I can only lose some of my lifespan. Su Fong could only use his last resort. The heavenly secret life shrinking technique. Every time he used the heavenly secret life shrinking technique, he would lose a large amount of his lifespan. No one was willing to experience such pain. Therefore, Su Fong would not use this trump card until the very end. In order to obtain a primordial heavenly treasure, Su Fong was going all out this time. The heavenly mandate avatar flashed out of the Tao Palace and entered the longevity lamp space without any obstruction. The longevity lamp original spirit could not see the existence of Su Fong's heavenly mandate avatar, but it sensed an ethereal aura of destiny. It was immediately shocked. What kind of power is that? Humph, no matter what kind of power it is, an insignificant, low-level existence like you can't make me submit. I control destiny and control the heavenly secrets. If I'm destroyed, everything will be destroyed. The heavenly mandate avatar erupted with the supreme power of the law of destiny. Tao runes rolled out, burning with the mysterious flame of destiny. It surged like a tsunami and instantly enveloped the longevity lamp. Human cultivator, you should give up completely. You're no match for me at all. If it weren't for the fact that I had just fused into one and was still in a weakened state, I could easily devour your soul and leave. How could I allow you to act so arrogantly in front of me again and again? The longevity lamp original spirit was still shouting wantonly, unaware of the fatal danger that was approaching. However, in the next moment, the flame of destiny burned the lamp-like original spirit layer by layer. Ah, what kind of power is that? It can actually erase my existence and suppress my will. Amidst the miserable screams of the origin spirit, the flame that was originally as tall as a person quickly shrunk to the height of half a person, and the flame also became dim and dispirited. Moreover, the supreme power of fate forced the primordial spirit to submit to Su Fong's will. Although it was unwilling to submit, it had no choice but to kneel before Su Fong. The shadow of the lantern was trembling. At this moment, Su Fong's destiny avatar used the divine fate life shrinking technique to seal the ball of fire tightly. Now, everything was out of Yuan Ling's control. He obediently listened to Su Fong's instructions and could do whatever he wanted. Su Fong peeled off the blood essence and seeped into the longevity lamp, spreading to every corner. Longevity lamp, are you still not willing to submit? Su Fong coldly shouted at Yuan Ling. I won't submit even if I die. Ah, it's not that I don't want to submit, but there's a brand left by the former master in my body. His residual will is affecting me, so I can't submit to you. Yuan Ling's voice was trembling. The former master actually left a brand? Su Fong was shocked and stunned. His consciousness immediately penetrated into the depths of the lantern. Sure enough, he found a ball of black light that was only the size of an egg. Inside the ball of light, there was a black-clothed figure sitting cross-legged. His eyes were tightly closed, and he was motionless. He had already lost his consciousness. No matter who you are, and no matter what kind of peerless expert you were in the past, since you've already fallen, leaving this brand is meaningless. I won't be polite anymore. The Destiny Avatar immediately activated the seal around Yuan Ling. It penetrated into the depths and wrapped around the ball of black light. After a burst of burning, The light and the black-clothed figure inside were wiped out. Then, Su Fong used the seal to leave his primordial spirit and the brand of fate in Yuan Ling's consciousness. In this way, Su Fong was equivalent to completely controlling this primordial heavenly treasure. Are you willing to submit to me now? Su Fong looked at Yuan Ling of the Longevity Lantern and said in a majestic voice, "Master, from now on, I'm a part of you. Your will is my everything." The lantern jumped and transformed into a woman's figure again. She knelt down and kowtowed to Su Fong. "Humph, it seems that you also like to use tough means." Su Fong snorted coldly, looking at the Yuan Ling, who was extremely arrogant just now, and now became so docile and obedient. He was extremely pleased. "It's not that I didn't want to submit before, but the brand left by the former master affected my consciousness, forcing me to not submit to you, master." "I see. Let me ask you. You're called the Longevity Lantern. What are your main abilities?" This was what Su Fong was most concerned about. After master fuses with this subordinate is equivalent to master's Dharma body. This subordinate has two main abilities. One is to make master's soul immortal, and the other is to devour souls. Immortal soul, indestructible fate, devour souls? Su Fong's eyes lit up. Immortal soul, indestructible fate meant that one could live forever. Even if one's physical body was destroyed and one's Tao palace was shattered, it did not mean death. No wonder this primordial heavenly treasure could be called longevity. Immortal soul, it was indeed immortal. However, Su Fong remained calm and continued to ask, "Since I have you, I can immortal soul and indestructible fate. Then how did your former master die?" "Master, this subordinate's previous master did not die." "Master, please listen to this subordinate's explanation." The Yuan Ling of the Longevity Lantern explained to Su Fong. The Longevity Lantern had the powerful ability to devour souls. It was extremely domineering. It used the master's soul as the wick and the souls it devoured as the oil, making the master's soul immortal. As long as the Longevity Lantern was activated, the souls of all living beings would be devoured and turned into oil for the Longevity Lantern, strengthening the master's original soul. As for how powerful it was, it depended on the master's cultivation. With Su Fong's intermediate realm of Tao emptiness, he could devour the souls of all living beings within a 10,000-mile radius. Of course, the Longevity Lantern could not devour some extremely powerful living beings. It was not that the Longevity Lantern was not powerful enough. It was just that the Longevity Lantern used the master's original soul as the wick. If the enemy was too powerful, the wick would be burned to ashes. The Longevity Lantern devoured the souls of living beings, making the master become extremely powerful and gain the ability to immortal soul. No matter how powerful the skill was, it could not kill the soul or wipe out fate. When the original soul was strong enough, even if the physical body was destroyed, the Longevity Lantern would not be extinguished. It could ensure that the master would not die and still have a chance to come back to life. However, this ability of the Longevity Lantern had a great limitation. If the master's cultivation was not enough, the frequent activation of the Longevity Lantern to devour souls would cause the master's soul to lose its emotions and consciousness. Moreover, every time the Longevity Lantern was activated, it would burn the master's soul. Although it would not cause any harm, it would make the master's soul stronger. This process was extremely painful and could not be endured without a strong will. "Since your previous master did not die, where is he now?" "Master, my previous master surpassed the peak that cultivators could reach. He coexisted with the heavenly Tao and obtained true immortality, not true death. My previous master's way of existence was far beyond your imagination. To coexist with the ethereal heavenly Tao and become an eternal existence, this was true immortality." Su Fong finally understood the true meaning of immortality. To become an existence that coexisted with the heavenly Tao, it was naturally immortal. Su Fong realized that the peak of cultivation might be an existence in such a state. However, this height was not something that Su Fong could understand at the moment. He was now a mere cultivator of the Void Dao realm, and could be considered a peerless powerhouse among the human race. However, he was still thousands of miles away from the true peak of the Great Dao. It was ridiculous to think about this now. I understand. Under the guidance of the Origin Spirit, Su Fong's consciousness roamed the entire Magic Treasure's internal space. Then, he sucked the longevity lamp into the Taoist Palace and stored it in a whirlpool space in the Taoist Palace. He continued to fuse and master the formation. He had another peerless treasure. This was a primordial heavenly treasure. When he completely fused with the longevity lamp and continued to cultivate, he could finally cultivate into another Dharma body of Su Fong. The longevity lamp was not only a life-saving trump card, but also had the domineering ability to devour souls. However, he could not use it too frequently. Su Fong would not use this ability until the last moment. If he eventually lost his emotions and consciousness, even if he did not die, what was the difference between that and death? It was not that easy to completely fuse with the longevity lamp. Not only did he need to fuse with blood, he also needed to fuse with his own soul and turn his soul into the wick of the longevity lamp. Then, he could devour the souls of living beings and use other souls as lamp oil, so that his soul flame would never be extinguished. In the chaos tide this time, he obtained the two treasures, the Rui Heavenly Dipper Wheel and the longevity lamp. He also obtained a large number of time mirages and exchanged them for countless treasures and resources through transactions. In addition, Su Fong advanced to Middle Dao Void Realm. Before the catastrophe descended, Su Fong's overall strength had a great improvement. The pressure in his heart more or less eased a little. Following the precipitation of time, Su Fong cultivated in the abode for 20,000 years and finally stabilized his cultivation at the normal state of Middle Dao Void Realm. Comprehending the time, mirages caused Su Fong's cultivation of the Jiuquan Limitless Sutra to also improve along with it. The sixth-level realm reached the height of mastery. The Rui Heavenly Dipper Wheel was also fused by Su Fong and could unleash more than half of its power. The power unleashed was even more astonishing than in Hulingyi's hands. Gui, Gay, Heaven-Piercing Blood King Vine, Heaven-Devouring Insects also all had considerable improvements. The cultivators under Su Fong's command also improved incomparably shockingly, especially Qingyu and Bai Ling. Under Su Fong's special care, their improvement was even more astonishing. Currently, they already possessed strength comparable to Dao Profound Realm. It's time to go to the punishment hall and accept the mission. Su Fong felt that if he continued close seclusion cultivation, it would be very hard to have rapid improvement anymore. The human world's catastrophe already started sweeping. Su Fong urgently wanted to increase his strength right now. Just relying on close seclusion cultivation was clearly not enough.